across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell, in for Alex Phillips, back on home ground, and great to be with you after a week off. I'm back as well on Monday, as usual, with the evening exchange from 7 o'clock all week. But I'm here today and tomorrow between 10 and 1, and there are many questions to be asked this weekend, including whether J.D. Vance is right when he blames mass invasion of migrants for Henry Novak's death. Do you agree with him? Do you think that's right? 0344 499 1000. Also, the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, Lucy Powell, calls Nigel Farage a threat to democracy. Those are her words. Very interesting, and this debate and indeed controversy continues over Henry Novak's death. It's been over a week since the conviction of his killer. It's also been about a week since the release of that dreadful footage that showed him being handcuffed after ridiculous and unfounded allegations of racism. We'll talk as well about Andy Burnham. He's promised pubs a 20% rate cut if he becomes Prime Minister in the Makerfield by-election. We'll also talk about why the Bank of England has dropped Winston Churchill after being told he was elitist and divisive. The man who won the war for us is elitist and divisive. That is what the Bank of England has decided. Loads more to discuss, including the SNP launching legal action against Peter Murrell to recover some of more than the £400,000 that he embezzled. Maybe he could sell a few coffee machines as well. And we'll talk about the dreadful anti-Semitism over Robbie Keane, because he was previously the manager of Maccabi Tel Aviv. They don't want him at Celtic. And Maureen Lipman revealing that she has had to hire security to protect herself from pro-Palestinian activists. So much to discuss here on the programme this morning. 0344 499 1000 is the way to get in touch, to give me a ring, to drop me a voice note, to send me a WhatsApp text message, however you want to get in touch. As I say, 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. So many ways to get in touch, so many ways to express your opinion. That's what it's all about. What do you think of the topics we're talking about today? Stay with us between now and 1 here on Talk. Well, let's just remember some of this controversy over Henry Novak, the young man, 18 years old, who was falsely accused of racism, then he was stabbed, and then he was murdered by being stabbed. And some of the detail of that hasn't really come out. It's absolutely appalling and disgusting. It's been a debate in Parliament this week, and indeed the war of words has happened between J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, last night. He was criticised by Downing Street. We also know that this week at Prime Minister's Questions and in Parliament and elsewhere, indeed, Keir Starmer's been talking about this on a number of occasions. Let's just remind ourselves what his thoughts are on this. The Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Henry Novak's family have shown extraordinary dignity after their son's life was stolen in appalling circumstances. He was clearly a kind and thoughtful and much-loved young man. There are serious questions to answer, including how accusations of racism informed police thinking, and we're supporting the IOPC to get to the bottom of what happened. But no matter the pain we feel, there is no justification for more violence and disorder. Yeah. The attacks directed towards police officers in Southampton last night were disgraceful and completely unacceptable. Yeah. This is a time for serious work, not rage. Yeah. And let me be clear. We will ensure anyone found engaging in disorder meets the full force of the law, as we have done before.
The Prime Minister was speaking on Wednesday. That was just a few hours after disturbances in Southampton. 11 police officers were injured and a police dog as well. Nigel Farage has been criticised for his language as well. He got an apology out of the BBC for misquoting him. He's also been criticised for not condemning what happened in Southampton, including during Prime Minister's Questions. This is what happened on Wednesday.
If the public lose trust in being treated fairly by the police, can he take some action, end this divisive practice of two-tier policing and make sure that all British citizens are treated the same?
Mr. Speaker, I don't believe there's two-tier policing in this country. I'm really shocked that he pretends to have respect for Henry's family and then acts in this way. Grieving family have asked us not to respond in the way that the Leader of Reform has responded. They've asked us not to. My response, and the response of others to be fair, has been focused on the lessons to be learned so we can deliver justice. His response has been to appeal for rage. Rage. That's his response to a father who's lost his son and asked for that not to happen. Exploiting this tragedy to create grievance and division would be wrong in any circumstances, but to do it when the family are expressly saying, please don't, is unforgivable.
Keir Starmer in a war of words there with Nigel Farage. That's continued over the last couple of days. We've seen the Vice President of the United States talking about this, saying that migration was to blame. We've also seen the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, Lucy Powell, say that Nigel Farage is a threat to democracy. Well, let's find out what Graham Stringer MP, the Labour MP for Blackley and Middleton South, thinks about this. Graham, you're very welcome to the programme and thanks for joining us on a Saturday morning. Who's right here in all of this?
Well, it depends which point you take. I think my colleague and next-door neighbour and constituency, Lucy, is wrong about this. I think we have to debate what needs debating in this issue. We can't just get away with pigeonholing people and calling people names. There is a debate to be had here, and we should engage in it. I think Keir Starmer is wrong when he says there isn't two-tier policing here. There are many examples. Probably the best example, which I think is an embarrassment to the Prime Minister now, was during lockdown when the police let Black Lives Matter supporters have their demonstrations on the streets, whereas they were arresting people who were campaigning in favour of civil liberties against the infringement on people's right to walk about the streets brought about by the way COVID was implemented. So I think in those two cases, my colleagues are wrong. They're right. There's no excuse, however upset and enraged people are having seen that video. There is no excuse for violence on the street. That is not going to help anybody. What we really need now is a close look both at the individual case, the coroner's court will investigate that, police disciplinary procedures will investigate that, but the whole background to policing, because there is something seriously wrong with policing in our country at the moment. Some of that is probably to do with over-concentration on identity politics in the training of police officers. That needs to be looked at because we want the best policing we can get and we want the public to support the police. That's the instinct of the public, but events like this damage that instinct.
Is the Prime Minister a hypocrite here, given that he says that Henry Novak's death should not be politicised? Has he politicised it? Or is he just reacting to others politicising it, especially when he was very happy to take the knee when George Floyd died in America, which of course sparked the Black Lives Matter protests?
I think there is a lack of consistency. I prefer that word rather than calling the leader of my party a hypocrite. But there is a lack of consistency. And it goes back to the first point I made really about Lucy. What we need when terrible events like this happen, which throw a spotlight potentially into the failures of policing, we need a cool look at it, but we also need debate. What is going wrong with the training of police officers?
Well, what do you think, Graham? What do you think is going wrong? Because they're now looking at some of these guidelines in regard to what happens with race and how this is dealt with. Because surely, as the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, I think one of the sensible Chief Constables, Stephen Watson, has said, everyone just must be equal before the law. And if everyone is equal before the law, and if everyone is treated equally, I know that's harder to do than it sounds, that will take away the allegations of two-tier policing, won't it?
I agree with Stephen Watson. We've had his two predecessors were dreadful chief constables, and I'm relieved we now have a chief constable who is leading his police force with common sense and trying to put right what has gone wrong over the previous 10, 15 years or so. So I agree with him completely about that. Some of the training is inappropriate. We've had police officers in the light of this event coming out and saying that they are worried of being accused of being racist. It alters the way they police. And I think that runs the whole of the public sector. I could give you real examples of this, where not just police officers but other public servants are frightened of the accusation of racism, even when they are confident that they are not racist. The accusation of racist, given how
well, it can destroy a career, as we know, Graham. And feel free to tell me any of those examples if you want to. I'm sure you've come across it as a constituency MP as well, because this is something that people are really genuinely worried about.
Look, I mean, I'm not going to name names, but I've been involved as a leader of a council for a long time, so I still have contacts with officers working in local government. And one officer had got a black woman, as it happened, who wasn't doing a job. So she tried to discipline her. There was an immediate accusation of racism. That was carried through, and the woman was eventually disciplined and sacked. But it was a pretty horrific experience. But the real point I wanted to make about that is talking with other people. Almost every manager in the public service I talked to had a similar experience.
Yes, and I've come across times where it says, don't criticise that person, or don't go down that road of criticising that person because they'll throw the allegation back at you of racism, when actually sometimes there are legitimate things to discuss. For example, people's competence, and that's not, that is very far from people's views. I wonder if I could talk about another party colleague of yours, Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, and he's talked about migration. He's been speaking to the BBC, and he's been asked about the approach to migration, and he says, talking about reform on the Tories, specifically when it comes to the deals with France and Germany and what should be done about migration, he said, well, I think what they mean by that is that they let people drown in the water, and that is not a British way to deal with it. That is not commensurate with our values. The way to deal with it, the way to deal with small boats, the way to deal with it is the way we've been dealing with it. Does he get it?
He absolutely doesn't. As you will have noticed when I spoke about the Prime Minister and the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, I am reluctant to criticise colleagues in personal terms. I'm prepared to have an open debate about the issues, but I make an exception for the Attorney General. He is the most inexperienced most inexperienced in parliamentary terms Attorney General in more than a century, and it shows. I believe he's incompetent. I also feel able to criticise him because he believes I'm effectively a Nazi, because I don't think we should have the Human Convention on Human Rights. So if a colleague, so-called colleague, is prepared to use language like that, then I think he's an idiot, quite frankly. Talking about people drowning in the Channel, if anybody's responsible for that, it is he as Attorney General who is failing to stop people coming into this country illegally, having paid international criminals. Some of those people drown because they feel they've got a very good chance of getting into this country, and they're right in feeling that, because he won't take the necessary action to make it both difficult and not worth their while crossing the dangerous English Channel.
Graham, good to talk to you as always. Plenty of common sense from Graham Stringer MP there, the Labour MP for Blakely and Middleton South. Hope you have a nice weekend, Graham. Let's speak to Robert in Hertfordshire, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Robert, you're very welcome to the programme. I think it's Lucy Powell, the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, you want to talk about. She has called Nigel Farage a threat to democracy. What do you make of what she said?
Well, how about this then? She's a Deputy Leader of a party who's trying to take us back into Europe and overrule the democratic,
will of the people. So perhaps your point is that she's the threat to democracy. Would you agree with that?
The whole party is. The other point is, that was the first point, which annoyed me 10 seconds into your programme.
Yes, okay.
But the other thing is, your colleague, Andre Walker, was astounded me the other night on Thursday. He was the very first person to do it. Within a minute of his programme, he stood up on his desk and took the knee for Henry. Now, the next morning, I thought, what a great idea. I've got my wife to take a photo of me and put it on Facebook. It's been absolutely swamped. There's been collages doing it. But what I'm saying is this. Once the government took the knee for George Floyd, and made that, they set a precedent. So therefore, they've already set a precedent. If they don't do that for Henry, it's racist. Now the other thing.
Just on that point, Robert. I mean, Graham Stringer, the MP we just spoke to there, says there is a lack of consistency from the Prime Minister. You didn't want to call him a hypocrite. Would you call the Prime Minister a hypocrite, or say there's a lack of consistency on that?
Well, he's a hypocrite, two-tier. But now I'm saying two-tier taking the knee. Now there's a new one.
Mm-hmm.
And what should happen is, when England go in the World Cup, every game they should take the knee, because we had to endure that every game for years, taking the knee. If they don't do it, it's racist. If they don't do it, because it's their own fault for setting the precedent. They done it when Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner was in his study, and they took the knee. They've already set now. They have set the precedent.
Okay.
They cannot fail not to do it.
Robert, listen, thanks for your thoughts there. That's Robert in Hertfordshire. If you'd like to join him on the air, whatever your thoughts on any of this, do let me know. 0344 499 1000. We're talking about Makerfield, and the by-election there is in, a week and a half now, Thursday, the 18th of this month. And because we've been talking about it by law, I've got to read out what the different candidates are. So I'll do this twice in the programme. It's a thrilling thing, but listen, it has to be done. The law has to be adhered to. And on the 18th of June, the Makerfield by-election will have Jake Austin for the Liberal Democrats standing, Count Binface for the Count Binface Party, Andy Burnham for the Labour Party, Dan Clark for the Libertarian Party, John Dyer is an independent, Ed Gemmell for the Climate Party, Paul Gould is an independent, Alan Howling Lord Hope for the official Munster Raving Looney Party, Robert Kenyon for Reform UK, Robert Pownell for Protect the Wild, Rebecca Shepherd for Restore Britain, Sarah Wakefield for the Green Party, Peter Ward for Rejoin EU, and Michael Winstanley for the Conservative Party. Plenty to talk about, and I was, to be honest, pretty astonished by how direct Graham Stringer was there on Lord Hermer. That was definitely one of the strongest criticisms from any Labour figure I've heard about Lord Hermer. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about J.D. Vance's comments and the entire controversy over the Henry Novak murder. We'll have more detail on that as well, that a lot of people aren't familiar with. I've got some more detail to tell you after the news. We'll be on the debate desk with Jack Rowlett and Sebastian Salek, political commentators both. I want to hear from you as well. Do give me a shout. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Varda Kalakane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I just want to bring you some of the detail of Henry Novak's stabbing. It is only 10:25 in the morning, so some of this is a bit graphic, and I just want to have a warning about that for people who might have children listening. But he was bleeding to death from 5 stab wounds, Henry Novak, this 18-year-old student. He tried to climb over a commercial rubbish bin and over a fence to escape. His murderer, Vikram Digwa, filmed him. He taunted him. He says, "You're not going to get away with this, big man." Henry landed on top of a parked car on the other side of the fence. Digwa walked round and took close-up photos of him lying on the ground. A home security camera then captured what might actually be the most chilling exchange in all of it. Henry said, "I am dying." Digwa said, "You're not dying, bro." 10 minutes later, Henry said, "You stabbed me." Digwa replied, "No, I didn't." Of course, he had done that. In the 10 minutes that followed the stabbing, Vikram Digwa did not call an ambulance. He filmed Henry Novak for a full 5 minutes. The clip was deemed too disturbing to be played in court. The judge, in his sentencing, said, "You should continue to make films of Henry suffering, ignoring much of his desperation at having been stabbed. You told him that had not happened, no doubt to convince others who were nearby." Absolutely dreadful. This is what Hampshire police walked into. They believed the murderer when they got there. And we know now what has happened. This 5-minute video exists. Henry's family knows what's on it. The courts knows what's on it. But many people out there perhaps don't know what's on it, but it is factual. It's too disturbing to be shown. We're showing at various points the footage of Henry being handcuffed, but this 5-minute video won't be shown because it is too disturbing to show. And that says so much about the brutality of this murder. It has caused a political storm as well on both sides of the Atlantic, actually. We were hearing from Graham Stringer there. We also heard from J.D. Vance, who has blamed a mass invasion of migrants for Henry Novak's death. Well, we know the murderer, despicable human being that he is, was actually born in Southampton, so is born in the UK. I wonder how much of that actually goes into people's thinking about this. There's so much to talk about here, and I'm delighted that on the debate desk this morning, I'm joined by Jack Roulat and Sebastian Salek, political commentators, both. Great to see you.
Good morning.
We have lots of different aspects of this. Let's start with J.D. Vance and what he has said. What do you make of this, Jack? Where's the truth? Who do you have sympathy with, particularly when it comes to number 10, criticising the Vice President?
Well, I certainly don't have any sympathy with J.D. Vance. I think the American government needs to stay out of British politics. I think the irony here is that over the last few years we've imported a kind of American lens on race and identity, where you sort of view every issue through that lens, and I think that's been really damaging for British culture. Is
it not fair to look at this case through the lens of race? Because race was an aspect of it. Henry Novak was accused of being racist. That was not true. And the two people who are, and this was perhaps dealt with in a different way because of the race of the murderer.
I think it's one thing to look at race as one aspect of this case. I think it's another to draw very sweeping conclusions from a single incident and to kind of make it about a mass invasion of migrants when, as you were saying before, Henry Novak's killer wasn't even a migrant. I think it's the Trump administration trying to cause trouble in British politics, and I think we should absolutely reject it. And I think, above all, really, it's such a shame, I mean, beyond that, more than a shame, that Henry Novak's family are having to deal with this. I think, God forbid, if anything like this were to happen to someone that we loved, I think I would hope that we would show an ounce of the dignity that Henry Novak's family have shown. And I think various political figures, J.D. Vance being the latest, have really let themselves down in how they've responded to this.
What about Nigel Farage? Is he leading from the front? Is he saying the things that should be said? Or is he letting the family down? What do you think?
Well, I would put him in the same bracket. I think he's letting the family down too. I think he's politicising it. And
is the Prime Minister not politicising this as well?
I think there's a distinction between, obviously, every policy issue is innately political. And if you have an issue with how policy is being applied here, then naturally you're going to have to make a political argument. I think what Nigel Farage is doing is he's trying to turn this issue into a sort of shameless opportunity to promote reforms, cause, and to kind of ward off the threat of restore.
Do you not think that two-tier policing is an action here?
I think it probably is. I
mean, if it probably is it not reasonable for Nigel Farage to say the things he's saying?
I think there's ways of doing it, and I think I would be much more sympathetic to how Kemi Badenoch has responded to it, which is to say, actually, what we don't want to do is we don't want to do the reverse of what the left has done over Black Lives Matter and kind of racialising all of these incidents, importing that American culture wars nonsense. Now there are various parts of the right that are trying to do the opposite thing from the other side and are trying to turn everything into an issue of racism against whites. And I think actually what we need is that balance. We need colourblind policing, absolutely.
But that's not what happened in the Henry Novak case. Would you argue that colourblind policing happened in Henry Novak's case, Sebastian?
It's certainly a colossal failure of policing.
Yeah.
I don't think, and I think this is where we probably agree, I don't think we can extrapolate this and talk about this as a wider problem. And this is where I find the comparison
You don't think you can extrapolate it?
No, I don't think so. And this is where I find the comparison with George Floyd a bit clumsy. Because Floyd was, he was symbolic because it was a pattern of behaviour. We knew that...
He was also killed by a police officer.
He was.
Which now, there are many people who believe the police didn't help here. I am one of them. But they didn't kill him. He was murdered by the perpetrator here. And we'll talk about that in a minute or two. This was Digwa. This was the murderer that killed Henry Novak here.
Yeah, definitely. But what we know is that in America, and shamefully in the UK, you are more likely to be shot dead by a police officer if you are black than if you are white. And George Floyd was
emblematic. How many black people have been shot dead by police officers in the UK?
I don't know.
It's a tiny number.
Sure, it's tiny, but the statistic is still uncomfortable.
It's not a statistic I welcome. I'm completely with you on that. Certainly when it comes to stop and search, that is the point. But also, the statistics also show that proportionately, proportionately more black people as a proportion of that community commit crimes.
Sure, but that still doesn't excuse shooting them by police.
No, I don't want anybody shot by police.
You could also look at statistics
unless they're trying to shoot us.
On arresting without restraint, without resistance. So black people who show no kind of no quarrel, who are still being arrested, and you are disproportionately more likely as a black person to be arrested for that reason as you are white. So we have problems. And when you ask about two-tier policing, I do think we have two-tier policing, but it's not the kind that Reform is talking about, and it's not the kind that we've seen play out in front of us.
But was it not the case with Henry Novak that he was treated differently because he was accused of racism and because he was a white man?
He was treated differently because he was accused of racism. I think that's fair. But what I don't think this represents is a trend. And that's what we have with George Floyd. That's what we don't have here. And I really hope it doesn't materialise.
You don't think there's a trend of action against white people being treated differently and in a two-tier way? You think that's wrong?
No, look, there are high-profile examples, and this gets us into grooming gangs, which equally I would say is an awful failure. But it's not a trend in the same way as the awful statistics that we have around people of colour being treated by the police in the US or indeed in the UK.
I wonder if we could talk a little bit about the religious element of this. for example, because Sikhs are now saying, the Sikh Foundation has pointed out, Sikh Federation has pointed out that many Sikh people, who are a very, very, in general, very, law-abiding community, that this has meant that there's more racism against them. And this issue of carrying around the kirpan, which is a small knife, which is a symbolic thing, that wasn't used in the stabbing. I think a lot of people think it was, and it wasn't actually, because the kirpan knife, small knife, part of their faith that's carried around, some people think that shouldn't happen, and listen, if you're one of them, or maybe you think it should, absolutely fine, let's debate that, 0344 499 1000. But Digwa also carried around a 21-centimetre dagger, and indeed he was convicted of possession of a bladed weapon as well as murder. So murder sentences have a starting point of 25 years if a weapon is taken to the scene in order to kill. For Digwa, the judge added 8 years for 10 aggravating factors, among them that he had abused the privilege extended to Sikhs and dishonoured his religion, with mitigation that became a 21-year minimum. So religion actually made a sentence longer rather than shorter.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, I don't like the idea that different laws apply, or different implementation of the law applies to people from different religions. I think absolutely, just as you have to be colourblind, you have to be blind to people's religion too.
So should we
any
stop
other
people
factor.
carrying a kirpan knife?
Yeah, I think we should. I think the law should apply equally to people of all faiths. I think that's a fundamental tenet of a
even if there are
democracy.
Thousands of people carrying around these knives, kirpan knives, that are never used for anything other than symbolic religious reasons, you would ban it.
Yeah, of course. Just as if there was any other group that was carrying around knives and not murdering people, I still think if you're going to have a law that says you can't carry around knives, then that should apply to everybody.
The law already applies here, because if you use the kirpan in a violent way, that is no defence. You go down as in the same way as if you pulled out a machete on someone. So the law is pretty robust in this area.
Robust is one thing, but equal is another, and I think it should apply. I think it should apply equally.
Should we be equal or should we be equitable? And this is where I would probably disagree with you, where different people are treated in different ways. And I made this bizarre example the other day, and I'll give it again. I could walk into a pub and buy a drink. A 5-year-old couldn't. We are not treated equally. We are treated equitably, in that it's not appropriate for a 5-year-old to do that. So the law applies differently to
But we're
different
talking
people.
about adults here. We're not talking about children. I think that's an irrelevant example.
No, so what I'm giving you is an example of age, and here we're talking about religion.
Yeah, but religion is a choice, and age is not a choice.
Yeah, but it's more than a choice, isn't it, religion?
Some people would argue that religion isn't a choice. Some people would argue that
they would, and they'd be perfectly entitled to that position.
But
my position is that, they're wrong. It is a choice.
Very interesting. Lots more to debate in all of this with Sebastian and with Jack. Lorraine's been in touch and says, lovely to see you back, Peter. Thank you very much. I had a lovely holiday and a nice birthday. And thank you to a number of people who sent cards and presents and things. Very, very kind of all of you. Really appreciate that. Andrew Bailey, the Governor of the Bank of England, says Lorraine has lied to the public when he stated the change was due to counterfeiting. We now know it was about DEI, erasing British culture and history. Churchill gave us our freedom. He is the greatest British politician of all time. Bailey should be sacked. How dare these people erase all that made Britain great? Well, we will talk about that, those banknotes and what the Bank of England has been doing in regard to Winston Churchill. Apparently he's a divisive figure. We will talk about that in just a moment. Stay with us here on Talk, and do get your call in. Let us know what you think about any of these issues. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch. And Starmer, Brad in Cambridge says Starmer is by far the most hypocritical politician we've had. He has commented and interfered in US politics for years, says Brad. Joanna in Salisbury says JD Vance used the wrong example, but we have a huge problem with attacks of murder, rape, etc. from illegal migrants on Indigenous people or incorrect blame. Thank you for that. Tracy says, how can your guests say America should stay out of the murder of Henry Novak? British people and politicians and sports stars took the knee for a black American criminal who was high on drugs, arrested after doing a criminal act. Yes, killed by a police officer. His breathing was also suppressed by narcotics he had taken. Our police officers were complicit in Henry's death by not preserving life and not administering first aid. And Steve says it makes no difference whether people are born here or not. All immigration has achieved is pushing different cultures together so that they have little or nothing in common, are now rubbing each other up the wrong way. The biggest problem is the white Indigenous people have been forced to accept it or face being vilified if they don't bow down to it, says Steve. Well, thank you so much for your comments. We'll get to more of those as time goes on. We're still on the debate desk with Jack and Sebastian. We'll talk about banknotes in a second, but I wonder if I could just ask you about Lucy Powell's comments here. She's Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, and she has said that Nigel Farage is a threat to democracy. That is her view on all of this. It comes into the Henry Novak debate. I just wonder, Sebastian, as a former Labour councillor yourself, whether you agree with her or whether you agree with Graham Stringer, who disagrees with her. They are, of course, constituency neighbours up there in the northwest.
Yeah, I'm a little bit perplexed by this. And look, maybe she will come up with the goods and she will prove to be right. I don't understand when she says that Reform are exploiting online algorithms, and she says that's well documented, exactly what she means. Where she is right, though, is where she says that bots and troll farms amplify support for parties like Reform. And we've seen that. You've got well-documented cases of people abroad in countries like Nigeria and other parts of Africa and Southern Europe, Southern Asia, where you can make quite a lot of money by whipping up hate here and getting the views and turning that into cash. So there are people who are economically incentivised with no stake in British politics to be putting out accounts and creating controversy. What we also see a suggestion of is foreign governments getting involved. Now, we don't have any hard evidence of this. Sky's done a bit of investigation, as have some others. And we know that accounts that put out Reform-adjacent material also put out Russia-adjacent material. Now, we have no evidence that that's coming from a particular government, but we know that...
Or indeed Reform UK. It's not coming from them.
I'm not suggesting it's coming from them. But we know that it happens, and we know that other governments do use these kinds of techniques. So it's very, very murky, but it is shaping the way that we all think.
A couple more comments coming through. Lawrence says, I've just switched off. Both guests are borderline certifiable. So there we are, just to let you know. Sorry to lose you, Lawrence. I hope you come back in a few minutes' time. Janice says, here in the grassroots, which he never stays in, we the ordinary folk realise there's two-tier policing and the judiciary. We'd all like to live in Keir Starmer's bubble, says Janice in Staffordshire. Steve says it makes no difference whether people are born here or not. All immigration has achieved is pushing different cultures together, have little and nothing in common. Grant says people are missing the point. It's successive government policies relating to mass immigration that have led to the appalling police behaviour that has ultimately led to Henry's death, says Grant in Leicester. Does Grant have a point, Jack?
I think the problem here is that policing is inconsistent, and I think just as you can point to cases like perhaps this one, like the grooming gangs scandal, where a fear of being seen to be racist has interfered with the police's ability to do their job properly, I think you can also find plenty of instances where clearly anti-black racism has impacted the police's ability to do their job properly.
Is there an overcorrection here? I mean, it's more than 25 years since the Metropolitan Police and the Macpherson report was called institutionally racist. Is there now an overcorrection, do you think?
I think possibly in some areas, but I think that the real problem is that it's not being applied consistently. I think you do have to move out of identity politics. I don't think that the response to dissatisfaction with policing over the grooming gangs or this incident should be to kind of rally white people to have the same kind of ethnic consciousness that that the right has accused the left of fanning among minority ethnic communities.
But is that not just inevitable? I'm not saying it's right. I'm just wondering if it's not inevitable to have race consciousness when race is discussed so much by a variety of people from a variety of backgrounds.
Well, I think we should set our standards or set our hopes a little higher than that. I think we can do better as a society, and I think that has to be led by our politicians. And I think there's been I've been very disappointed with the response on much of the right and much of the left.
Sebastian?
I think it speaks to the importance of unconscious bias training. I think this is probably where we disagree as well, because I don't think you can be colourblind. I think you have to acknowledge race, but you also have to grapple with it, and that means feeling uncomfortable, because we all carry prejudices, whether we choose to or not. And it's about interrogating them, understanding them, and being able to come and say, look, I have explored within myself with it, whether I'm being racist or not here. I'm confident I'm not. I'm confident that that this is purely on the basis of the individuals in front of me, and therefore we should do something. And I think if that kind of thinking had been applied, for example, within grooming gangs, we'd have got to a much more satisfactory outcome.
Brad in Cambridge also says the police didn't know that Diggle was born in Southampton. All they knew is that they had a person of colour crying racism. That's why they reacted the way they did, in Brad's opinion. Alan in Nottinghamshire says JD Vance speaks from genuine concern from our country. Starmer does not have a sincere bone in his body, says Alan. We've heard from JD Vance a number of times, and he's talked about, for example, his worries about free speech in this country. He spoke at the Munich Security Conference last year. What do you make of that, Sebastian?
Yeah,
I heard a big sigh a second ago.
I just really don't buy any argument that JD Vance has our best interests at heart. The US government cares about the US people. This is their job. If I had JD Vance in front of me, I'd want to ask him, in what way is this furthering the wishes of the family, who said, please do not politicise the death of Henry Novak?
I mean, I have boundless sympathy for Henry Novak's family. I absolutely do, and I don't want to say anything against them or say that they're or criticise them in any way. I think they've acted in a very dignified way, but it is not up to them how we deal with this. It is not up to... We can respect their wishes or not respect their wishes, I get that, but and they can appeal for things, and I understand that. But simply by saying what they have, which is, let's not politicise this, it is politicised already. It's politicised by its nature. It's politicised because the Prime Minister's talking about it. It's not just the Prime Minister reacting to things. He's talked about it. Our viewers and listeners are talking about it. I don't want to ever shut debate down to... simply to assuage people's feelings, even if they're the feelings of a bereaved family. That might be a harsh and horrible thing to say, but I do think it needs to be said.
No, I think that's broadly fair, and we should all be allowed to talk about it, as we are. But for JD Vance to use this to further his views on, as he calls, a mass invasion of migrants, I think is in really bad taste. I'd want to ask him, what qualifies you to comment on the UK? He's not British, he's not from here, he doesn't know this country.
I've asked you on numerous occasions to talk about American political issues.
And I'm always uncomfortable doing
Sebastian,
it.
Really?
Yes, I'm first and foremost a commentator on British politics. Okay. I will go to the US if you ask me.
But you have opinions on it. You have opinions on it.
I will acknowledge that they are poor opinions.
And we have opinions on them as well.
Sure.
And that's perfectly fine.
Sure, but I'm not the Vice President of the United States. I'm a lowly commentator sat in a studio in London. And the other thing I'd ask him is, would you welcome Starmer voicing his opinions on the US? Because he has been pretty withdrawn on that. And I don't think he'd like it if it came as
Jack?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with Sebastian on this, and I think also let's be real here. The last person I want to listen to on free speech is JD Vance, who only seems to care about free speech when it supports his own side.
Speaking of divisive issues, John's got a really interesting message here where he says, when the left disagree with something, it's divisive. They don't like Churchill, so divisive. They don't like Farage and Vance's comments, so divisive. But for George Floyd, you can be furious, angry and interfere with American politics. They're hypocrites, says John in Suffolk. Just on that matter of Winston Churchill, this is a story about whether he should be on the Fiver. Personally, I'm very, very happy with that, and the more images of him I have and the more Fivers I have, the happier I will be, it must be said. But certainly there is a controversy here because the Bank of England have been told about the image of Churchill, and not just Churchill as well. In fact, there are others as well. Alan Turing, Jane Austen, contentious and not representative of the UK's cultural and natural diversity. I mean, I would argue that the man who won the war, the man who helped win the war through his brilliance, who was also an absolute icon for gay people and was treated incredibly badly for the fact that he was gay. And Jane Austen, you know, brilliant author. I mean, I would say that is very representative of the UK's cultural and natural diversity. But this is something where the officials were advised to replace portraits with images of nature and banknotes because historical figures represented a backward-looking vision. Well, I mean, it's history. A backward-looking vision of the UK that carries too great a risk of division and controversy. A risk of division and controversy. Jack, what do you make of this?
Well, I hate this embarrassment over our history. I think celebrating our history is incredibly important.
We have a great history. British history is fantastic.
We do, and I think it's such an important part of creating a kind of binding civic identity which allows people to sort of feel British without descending to a debate about ethnicity or religion. So I think we probably should have removed Churchill from the £5 note, but only to put him on a higher value note, because the £5 note's being inflated out of existence.
I must say I have fewer of the higher value notes, it must be said. I'm more a £5 man than a 50 man, it must be said. Sebastian, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm quite happy with him going, and as are the general public. This was a democratic exercise. Let's not forget.
Why are you happy with him going?
Because all politicians are divisive. If they were putting Attlee, a man I greatly admire, on the any note, I would say no to that as well. All politicians are inherently divisive. It is their job.
Is there any image that's not in some way divisive?
Well, look, I think cultural figures, historical figures who are not politicians are a little bit more palatable. You know, the fact that we're celebrating Turing and Austin is brilliant to me.
But we're not. We're taking them off the research says
I'm very happy with
we
them
should
to
take.
be there.
Yeah.
I look at
well,
history.
some people would say that Alan Turing is actually more divisive than Winston Churchill, for example, because of the controversy in regard to his sexuality. Now, I think I'd very happily have him many memorials to Alan Turing. I think he was a great man, but there will be people who would see him as a divisive figure.
I wouldn't agree with that. I think anyone who thinks Turing is divisive is maybe a bit homophobic. Am I going to say that? Well, I've said it now. Look, I view history a little bit differently.
As Peter Kay famously said, homophobia is a terrible thing. It must be awful to be afraid of where you live.
Yeah, look, I don't view history through our kings and queens and our prime ministers. I have nothing in common with any of those people. I view it through the people's history. I have much more in common with the people who lived in my community 100 years ago. And I would want to celebrate the things that we all shared, which is our wildlife, it's our buildings, and to me that is the greatest binder of our heritage.
Okay. We will talk more about a number of different issues with Sebastian and with Jack, but I'm going to tell you now about the FIFA World Cup. It is kicking off next Thursday, and our friends at TalkSport are sending you and a friend straight to New York City with Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier. It's the ultimate trip to watch England face Panama live at the MetLife Stadium. Return flights, hotel, match tickets and spending money all taken care of, plus Adidas is throwing in the official Trionda match ball and a fresh pair of boots. Don't miss out. Here is how to enter.
For your chance to win, head to our friends at talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate, or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close on the 12th of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talksportwin.com. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
Varda Kalakane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There's lots to talk about, and Sarah has been in touch to say, how can Labour talk about divisiveness at the same time as Lucy Powell calls a political opponent a threat to democracy? This is when they're manufacturing a new PM who hasn't had a single vote in a general election. Does anyone in the Labour Party have common sense or self-awareness? Howard says the Dunblane shooting changed the laws on handgun laws, even for those who use them legally in the sport. Laws should apply to all with no exceptions. Well, speaking of the law applying, certainly we've been talking an awful lot in the past couple of weeks about what's happening in Scotland. Peter Murrell, who was Nicola Sturgeon's husband, and the SNP is set to launch legal action against him to try to recover some of the more than £400,000 that he embezzled. Jack and Sebastian are still with me on the debate desk here. Will they be selling some coffee machines, Jack?
Well, I think they might. I mean,
I wouldn't be able to afford it, but I mean, I kind of want to buy the motorhome. I'll just be brutally honest.
Well, it's going to be a hell of a car boot sale, isn't it? But,
it is, yes.
But, I mean, quite how the SNP thinks it can be trusted to run the finances of an independent Scotland when it can't even run its own finances is the big question here. I think it's also...
Or notice that someone has embezzled 400 grand over a decade.
Because this is exactly the point, is that concerns were raised at various points during that decade, and they were ignored by the leadership of the SNP and the governing bodies of the SNP. I also think it's pretty disgraceful that this plea hearing was only took place just after the Scottish elections, so that it's been kind of kept out of the news in Scotland.
Well, we don't know if that was deliberate, certainly, but
it's a hell of a coincidence.
It is quite a coincidence, as you correctly say, and that does tend to happen. It's interesting as well how incredibly defensive John Swinney, the First Minister of Scotland, who was a childhood friend of Peter Murrell, has been over this, and he is refusing to say that there'll be any form of inquiry into it. Now, they, of course, want to get the money back, but presumably there should be some sort of public inquiry, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think there should. And I think for the SNP this is a massive problem, because for the last, decade or so, they've tried to appear sort of whiter than white, and they've sort of painted England and Westminster as this sort of corrupt place that's very different from Scotland, and actually, the SNP are above all that, and this shows that they're
absolutely not. Sebastian, what do you make of this? What would you like to buy? The salt and pepper shakers, or
what was it? There was
the hairdryer.
Grand Theft Auto 5 on PlayStation 4. That really jumped out at me. I just didn't have him down as a let's run around slapping about women and stealing cars kind of guy.
The one that really struck me, and actually we had a very kind viewer who got some information, Googled some information, sent it in, was the motion-activated makeup mirror, which is, you sort of move to one side, it moves with you, and the other side. About £380 from John Lewis.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they're still on sale?
Oh, they're still on sale.
Fantastic.
You can't get them. You sound very interested. The point, I suppose, suppose, with all of that is my thought, if it's motion activated, maybe that was for the camper van.
Ah, I see, the bumpy rides.
That's it. It would make sense. But yes, I mean, can they get the money back, or will Peter Murrell simply be laughing all the way to jail?
Yeah, well, let's hope so. I think the big loser here for me, really, is small donations in politics, because all of this money came from people who wanted independence. Now, we can argue, till kingdom come about whether that's a good idea, but in the greater debate around how do we fund politics, we have to encourage people to be able to give a little bit who aren't going to make large claims over what they want for their money, like Christopher Harborne, for example, reformed donor £5 million, and lo and behold, they're promising to cut taxes on.
Well, he gave £5 million to Nigel Farage rather than Reform UK.
To Farage, yes, who happens to be the leader of.
Yes, but he wasn't at the time.
No, true, but let's
just be precise.
No, that's true.
Let's just be precise about all of that. And Nigel Farage has said it was a personal donation and has denied that he's done anything wrong.
Yes,
in that regard.
The point is there that those large donations are an imperfect way of funding politics, aren't they? Because they always want something for it, and fair enough. If you're going to give a load of money, that's an investment. We don't have many altruists among us when it comes to political donations. But the people who give small amounts, I think, are more altruistic, and I worry that they're going to be scared off by things like this.
Just briefly, Andy Burnham has promised to pubs a 20% rates cut if he becomes Prime Minister. What do you make of this?
Well, it comes on top of the help that Labour has already given. What he hasn't said, I don't think, so far, is how he's going to fund that.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of promises and not a lot of where you're going to find the money, which is, of course, the critical question always in this, especially now when the budgets are very, very tight indeed.
Yeah, we're certainly going to talk about that more in the programme, and, of course, pubs and the nighttime industries in general have been through the ringer in the last 5 years or so with lockdowns and all the rest of it. What do you make of this plan, 20% off rates? He's also talked about things like hairdressers, for example, being taken out of tax, which I think would be a really good thing. There's so many people who stand on their feet all day, the backbone of Britain, who have just been hammered by so many different tax increases.
Yeah, well, I think the business rate system as a whole is a total mess, and it does need urgent reform. If he can fund it, I think it would be fantastic to cut the rates on pubs. I think we should encourage more social drinking. That's clearly better than the people drinking on their own in their own homes, which is the current tax setup essentially incentivises you to do, because it's so much cheaper to buy booze in the supermarket.
Well, thank you both very much indeed. Sebastian Salak there and Jack Rula, political commentators both. What do you think of what they said? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We'll speak to Jake Wallace-Simons in a minute. He's the journalist and author about NHS staff wearing pro-Palestinian badges. There are lots of other things as well to talk about, including Maureen Lipman and the anti-Semitism that national treasure has faced. Absolutely horrendous. We'll speak to Matthew Hulbert as well on that issue too. So much to discuss in the next couple of hours. Do stay with us and get your call in 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. I'm Peter Cardwell in for Alex Phillips today and tomorrow. Lovely to have your company. I'm here right through until 1 o'clock. So much to discuss, including Henry Novak's death and the fallout from it, what JD Vance has said. He said migration is to blame, the Vice President. We also, the Prime Minister talking about this, and the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party saying that Nigel Farage is whipping up hatred, saying that he is someone who is divisive and indeed is, in her words, a threat to democracy. I wonder what you think about that. 0344 499 1000. We'll also talk about the Celtic supporters who put their names to a statement opposing the potential appointment of Robbie Keane as manager over his role with Maccabi Tel Aviv. Is this just anti-Israel sentiment, or do they have a wider point? Also, Maureen Lipman, the National Treasurer, revealing just to hire security to protect herself from pro-Palestinian activists after what she says is Labour's lack of action on anti-Semitism. Zach Polanski as well says that Britons who served in the IDF, the Israeli army, must be tracked. So much to discuss in all of this. So many comments coming in, and I want to make sure we talk as well about what Andy Burnham has said about 20% rates cut for pubs if he becomes Prime Minister. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk. Nat has been in touch from Tel Aviv. He says Britain does not have a problem with the Sikh community. The scumbags an exception, not the rule. Talking about the murderer there of Henry Novak. JD Vance, not for the first time, spoke out of place in Nat's opinion, but Labour has had their nose in US politics for ages. She also says that Graham Stringer is a dying breed. We heard from him earlier on. Let's hear from Matt in Cheshire now. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Matt, what do you make of what JD Vance has said and what Trump has said about what is going on with Henry Novak here? What are your thoughts on this? You're very welcome to the programme.
Good morning, Peter.
Morning.
I agree with what he says, and I welcome his constant concern. But both he and Trump talk constantly of two-tier justice in the US when Trump was in court via Soros prosecutors. So they have an even more biased, politically biased judicial system and legal system than we do.
So are they not then in any position to criticise?
No, because they constantly said that, you know, basically Trump let Joe... I'm sure Trump could have taken Joe Biden to court when he left office if he wanted to. And he said he would lock Hillary Clinton up, but he didn't. So, and yet the Democrats are so vile and so spiteful that I think did Trump go to court twice? I'm not sure if he went to court twice. They basically wouldn't let him live when he wasn't president. They pestered him all through those 5 years, and I think they even forgot that themselves now. You know, Can I just make a comment also, Peter, on Labour tried to stop the local elections not long ago, and if it wasn't for Farage,
very good point.
There wouldn't have been any local elections.
Well, you're not the first person to this morning who has said that actually Labour, in your view, certainly was the threat to democracy there. And an earlier caller, I think it was Robert, who said earlier on that when they're trying to reverse Brexit, that's a threat to democracy too. So who is Lucy Powell actually to talk about threats to democracy when demonstrably Labour has tried to, at least at the most charitable interpretation of those local elections would be to postpone democracy?
Is it brain dead unawareness, or is it blatant hypocrisy? Is it Orwellian Marxist doublespeak, or are they just so stupid they don't know how hypocritical they are?
That was a Matt from Cheshire classic, rhetorical flourish there at the end of the call. So thank you very much indeed, Matt. It's always good to talk to you and appreciate you giving us a ring. That's Matt in Cheshire there. I want to talk now about a number of different issues. We'll start with the dozens of Celtic supporters clubs and different organisations, podcasts and so on, who've put their names to a statement opposing the potential appointment of Robbie Keane as manager of Celtic. Now, the reason for doing so is that he was manager manager of Maccabi Tel Aviv. Now, you may well remember a few months ago that Maccabi Tel Aviv were playing Aston Villa. There's a massive controversy over that because the fans were banned completely, shamefully, in my view, and we talked about that a lot at the time. We also know, of course, that Robbie Keane, I mean, he's a very, very well-qualified person to be manager of Celtic. But there is a group calling itself the Celtic Fans for the Liberation of Palestine. I mean, anyway, for us, Celtic supporters have a long and proud history of solidarity with the Palestinian people. For us, Robbie Keane's decision to manage Maccabi Tel Aviv during the genocide, factually not a genocide, in Gaza is impossible to ignore. To choose to manage a club in Israel while less than 40 miles away the same country was using indiscriminate weapons of mass murder against defenceless people is unconscionable. Right. Jake Wallace-Simons is with me, the journalist and author. Jake, I don't know about you. I'm no expert on football, as basically everybody who watches the station and has any awareness of me knows, but I can't remember a single word that Robbie Keane has said about Gaza, about Israel, about two-state solution. He's a football player and a football manager, and that's what he did and did well at Maccabi Tel Aviv.
That's right. There was also not a single word in that statement you just read out from the Celtic supporters of Palestine, or whatever they were, that was actually true. I mean, there was no genocide in Palestine, in Gaza, as you rightly pointed out, and there was no indiscriminate bombing. I mean, if there had been indiscriminate bombing, Israel, with all of its military firepower, could have wiped out Gaza in half an hour without having to put its own troops in danger, going into the tunnels to try to kill terrorists while protecting civilians and giving them evacuation orders. But now I'm dignifying the accusations by offering a defence.
Yeah.
They're so absurd, they shouldn't even need a defence. If somebody says the sky is pink and it's not, you don't really need to say it.
Well, exactly. You don't need to say, well, you know, let's actually prove that. It's interesting you mentioned that. And there's so much of this nonsense. I see it in Ireland all the time. There is a societal anti-Semitism in Ireland. There's a societal anti-Zionism in Ireland. I've written about it. I've talked about it. I mean, the statement I just want to read this out just to illustrate this point, not because I agree with a single word of any of this. Celtic was founded by a community shaped by the legacy of genocide, displacement and famine. Our club's roots lie in solidarity with those who suffered injustice and oppression. We cannot forget where we came from, nor turn our backs on those facing genocide today. I mean, it's just nonsense.
It is total nonsense, and it just goes to show how all these passions and discrimination against Jews and Israelis. I mean, look, you know, Roy Keane, he's not Israeli, he's not Jewish, as you've said. He hasn't spoken out about anything. All he's done is work for a team in Israel, which, by the way, is the only democracy in the Middle East. And yet all these passions are based on lies. I mean, you mentioned the word famine there. Famine is a great example because there was no famine in Gaza. There was not a shred of evidence of famine in Gaza. The food that went in was about 2,000 or 3,000 calories a day per person on average over the period of the war. And all of the pictures that we saw of apparently starving children on the front pages of newspapers were later exposed as kids suffering from other congenital diseases. And that's why they look like that. It's been a massive propaganda campaign that has rotted the minds of well-meaning people, but in particular, people who have an underlying tendency towards anti-Semitism. It's played into those bigotries, and these are the results.
I'd also just at this point like to wish you a happy Pride Month if you celebrate it, Jake, and to read out an extensive list of every country in the Middle East which recognises same-sex marriage. Have you got half an hour, Jake? Oh, no, it'll just take 1 second to say one word, which is Israel. So there we are. Let's talk about Maureen Lipman. She is a national treasure, great actress, wonderful comedy performer over many years, but she has had to hire security to protect herself from pro-Palestinian activists after what she says is Labour's lack of action on anti-Semitism. What does this say, do you think, especially when we think about what happened to Helen Mirren a couple of weeks ago?
Well, this is not recognisable to me. I don't recognise Britain anymore. You know, Britain is not a country where people are hounded because of their racial background, because of their political beliefs even, which are fairly moderate, or even their association with Jews, as we saw in the case of Roy Keane. You know, this is a country that's increasingly dominated...
Robbie Keane.
Sorry, Robbie Keane. This is increasingly dominated by extremism, by ideologues, by dogma, by fanaticism, and it's starting to present itself in the form of bullying on the streets, mob violence, intimidation. This is, I mean, you know, I don't want to make any comparisons to 1930s Germany myself, but certainly I've spoken to actual Holocaust survivors who have said that this reminds them in terms of the mood of some of their experiences from those days. I mean, we really need to take a look at ourselves as a society, and all the people who aren't speaking up, the so-called silent majority, need to decide, do you want to abandon the fate of your country to these fanatics, or do you want to stand up for moderation and reassert the old Britain? I really hope that that happens before too long.
And you would hope there would be some sort of political leadership. Instead, we have one of the main political leaders in the country, Zach Polanski, a man who I strongly believe has allowed anti-Semitism to flourish within his own party and entryism from many, many Islamists. He is now saying that Britons who served in the Israeli army, the IDF, must be tracked.
It's unbelievable. I mean, Britons, you know, who serve in Ukraine fighting tyranny, perfectly legal. Britons who are dual citizens who fight against jihadism in Israel on the front lines of the menace that threatens us too, should be seen as heroes, not tracked. I mean, if anybody needs to be tracked, it should be Zach Polanski and members of the Green Party, because in that party, there's far more likely to be extremists and jihadis than any other segment of the population. People should be tracking him, not Jews. I mean, what does he want next? Yellow stars?
It's horrendous. I know you've been writing in the Daily Mail today about the Oxford Union. This is supposedly a bastion of free speech. It's supposedly somewhere that has defended free speech for many generations. It's over 150 years old. Its president has said some horrendously anti-Semitic things and pro-Hamas things. Tell us your thoughts about this and the wider implications of that.
Well, a friend of mine who was formerly a president of the Oxford Union about 20 years ago went back to visit recently and was appalled. In his words, it's been taken over by hardline Muslims and their progressive allies, the same pattern we're seeing throughout society. He was amazed to see a stack of prayer mats, Muslim prayer mats, for public use inside the union buildings. 3 out of the last 5 presidents of Oxford have been Muslims. Nothing wrong with Muslims, of course, or them being president, but there's a notable skew compared to how the Oxford Union used to be, and that's reflected in its radicalism. It debates Israel at least once a month, roughly, and it's always in the most lurid terms, not about any nuances of the situation, but, you know, is Israel a genocidal apartheid state? Questions to which, in its mind, the answer is yes. Widespread sympathy for Hamas, and president after president have courted controversy, including celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk. I mean, this is a place that has squandered its wonderful inheritance. It's had people like Winston Churchill, Albert Einstein, Mother Teresa, the Dalai Lama, King Charles gracing the debating chamber as speakers. Its presidents have included everyone from William Gladstone to Boris Johnson, and now it has been taken over and descended into just another bastion of the radicalism seeking to take over our society.
We're going to get into a discussion about NHS staff in just a second. We're going to be joined by another guest, Matthew Hulbert, the Liberal Democrat activist. But just before then, can I ask you just one more question about the National Association of Muslim Police, because there's been some controversy about that in the last couple of days, Jake?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the media picked this up, and the Spectator picked this up a couple of days ago, a policy document by the National Association of Muslim Police, which is like an umbrella organisation for all the local Muslim associations in police forces around the country, had this major policy document which suggested that Zionism was Islamophobia, basically, that Israel was genocidal, that the IDF was a terrorist army, and it said that it tried to whitewash the crimes of Hamas, saying that the media had spread unverified claims of violence perpetrated by Hamas. It said that no children were killed by Hamas. I mean, tell that to the Londoner, Gavin Heller, whose twins, 12-year-old twins, were murdered by Hamas, and his daughter, her body was so badly mutilated that forensic scientists had to sift through fragments to identify her. I mean, tell that to him. I mean, this policy document was removed quickly by the association when media attention was attracted to it. But I've actually got the full thing, and I've been reading it today as it happens. It's unbelievable. It culminates in trying to control the language that officialdom is able to use. It says that actually anti-Semitism should apply to Muslims, not just to Jews, because Muslims have a Semitic language, thus depriving the word that Jews use to describe racism against them. And it says that we should not use terms like Islamist or jihadist for terrorism, because other people, Christians, Jews, and even Buddhists, it says, engage in terrorism too. So it seeks to control the words that we use.
Deeply weird.
We will be unable to describe the threat, and that's the first step to the threat succeeding.
Yes, goodness me. We're going to continue with you in a second, Jack. I'm going to take a quick break now, but we're going to come back with Jack in just a second. Jack Wallace-Simons. We're going to be joined by Matthew Hulbert, the Liberal Democrat activist, because there's another controversy. This is about Britons being divided over NHS staff wearing political badges after an attempt, a report, I should say, by Lord Mann, who's called for NHS staff to be banned from wearing political badges such as pro-Palestinian symbols on their uniforms. Stay with us.
Vardy Callicane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, the journalist and author Jake Wallace-Simons still with us, and we say hello to Matthew Hulbert, the Liberal Democrat activist. Good morning, Matthew.
Hi.
Just to say that a report by the government's independent advisor on anti-Semitism, Lord Mann, has called for NHS staff to be banned from wearing political badges. Now, these are all sorts of political badges, but of course pro-Palestinian symbols on their uniforms are the ones that Lord Mann has particularly exercised about. There are fears that staff were intimidating Jewish patients and staff, and there is some evidence of that, certainly. YouGov, the polling company, has done some polling on this, says that 45% of Britons say they support a ban on NHS staff wearing political badges, 40% oppose. So that's quite interesting how the country is certainly divided on that. Matthew, I wonder what you think about this.
Great to be with you again on a Saturday morning, Peter. Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, I think my position is a nuanced one. I think it depends what the symbol is and what the circumstance is. So, for example, I personally wouldn't have any problem at all. I'm part of the LGBT plus community. I'd have no problem with someone wearing a rainbow lanyard. I really don't know why anyone would have any great problem with that unless they are prejudiced as a person. I think it's a bit different with a Palestinian badge, given all the context around that. I could easily see how that would be seen by some as something which they might take great offence at, albeit that I have, as you know, Peter, a great deal of sympathy for the Palestinian people.
It's interesting, Matthew, isn't it, that you're talking about the circumstance and the symbols and so on. There are many people who may, because of the trans debate, for example, see LGBT or see rainbow lanyards or whatever as a political symbol. So is there room for nuance here? Surely you've got to have rules where you say, actually, you ban things that are political and you just have everybody wearing the same lanyard, the same, black lanyard or whatever it is, and that shouldn't be politicised at all, even if it's something you strongly agree with and you say that people might be prejudiced or whatever. I suspect that you accept that there is a political element to that.
There is, and for example, it's Pride Month, and happy Pride to the pair of you. And I will say that Pride is both a party, a celebration of how far we've come as a community, but also a protest for what we believe the rights that are still to be won. So it is political,
including in the Palestinian territories, for example.
Indeed, and you're quite right to say, and I'm perfectly happy to say on here, because Israel deserves absolute security and safety, and you're quite right to say that one of the few places in the Middle East, perhaps the only place,
it's the only one. It's the only one.
Where there, indeed, the only one where there is any kind of LGBT plus equality is Israel, and I'm absolutely happy to say that. So I mean, I guess you either have an outright ban, or then it's a question of nuance about what you allow or what you don't allow.
Is there real room for nuance on this, Jake? What do you think?
I think we need to be very, very careful about this. I think that there should be a depoliticisation of the NHS across the board. I think all flags, all political statements should be banned, including the rainbow lanyard, particularly if it is the Trans Pride Progress rainbow lanyard, which is nothing if not a political symbol. I think we need to think about this from the perspective of patients. I mean, if you were, for example, a young person who'd had transition surgery and were then seeking to retransition, suffering from all the mental and physical ill effects of that, and you came for treatment and your doctor or nurse was wearing a Pride Progress lanyard, which is different from the old-fashioned rainbow one, they would be stating their ideological position to you in a case when in a moment when you're very, very vulnerable indeed and needing impartial care. The same is said for a Jewish patient going in a vulnerable position and being faced with staff wearing Palestine pins. We had a case just a couple of years ago of a 9-year-old Jewish boy who was forced, with a rare blood condition, who was forced out of a bed to sleep on the floor by nurses wearing Palestine badges. We've had doctors confiding to other doctors recently that they would not treat an Israeli patient dying in A&E because of their nationality. We've had reports of Jews being deprived kosher food. But this is a wider thing. We can't have one rule for one rule for another. Israeli flag should not be worn either, although they're not regularly worn in hospitals, nor should any other flag, nor should the Pride Progress flag, nor should the Palestinian flag, nor should any symbols of political parties, whether it's Green or Reform or whatever. But I think that the only exception should be drawn for clearly religious symbols like the cross around the neck or whatever, and also symbols of our national togetherness like the Union flag and the poppy. Okay. I think those are the only exceptions we should have.
Final word from Matthew on this.
Well, it's interesting that Jake mentions that we should allow kind of the Union Jack or the poppy. To some, and I'm not saying whether this is right or not, but to some they are deeply political symbols. So again, we'd get into grey areas, don't we? So, I think there should be nuance here rather than outright ban. I'm a liberal. I don't like outright bans.
OK, thank you both very much. Jake Wallace-Simons there, the author and columnist there, and also Matthew Hulbert, the Liberal Democrat activist. Let's hear a couple of voice notes now. Anne has been in touch on these badges in the NHS. This is what Anne thinks.
Good morning. Great show. Just wanted to say about this badges being worn in the NHS. As a Jewish woman, if I was in a vulnerable state in hospital, very sick, the last thing I'd want is a nurse or a doctor coming to treat me with a badge on that implies that they hate me and they want me dead. how would that make me feel?
Thank you, appreciate that. Elisa has been in touch from Chelmsford on policing.
Welcome back, Peter. Great to see you back on air. Chief Constable Stephen Watson seems to get it. Sadly, too many of the leadership in policing do not. As a retired officer, I always want to stand up for our police. Once an officer, always an officer. It's family. However, the whole DEI agenda, in my opinion, has completely turned people's heads, and they don't see what's right in front of them. We need policing to return to basics, the preservation of life, the prevention and detection of crime, and treating everyone without fear or favour. That's not too much to ask, is it?
Very good points there from Elisa. Thank you. Let's go to Paul in Nottinghamshire, who has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Paul, you're very welcome to the programme. What point would you like to make this morning?
Hi, it was just about when we had the debate earlier, when we were talking about the Kurgan. I know Henry Novak wasn't killed by the Kurgan. However, they made the point where they're saying, yes, hopefully just might...
Do you know what, Paul? I really want to hear what you're saying. It's not a great line. We'll try and get you back on a better line, and we'll bring you back either in a couple of minutes or later in the programme. Let's see if we can get Paul back on a better line. Let's go to Peter in Liverpool, who wants to talk about JD Vance. Peter, you're very welcome. What would you like to say?
Hi. I think JD Vance is saying is actually speaking for the British public. I find it highly hypocritical of the Labour Party to say he's interfering with British politics when the Labour Party actually sent a delegation over to campaign against Donald Trump.
That's correct. That's correct. I mean, it's interesting what JD Vance has actually said, though. He's talked about migration and waves of migration. The killer, the murderer, but the murderer was born in Southampton.
He may have, I mean, 3,000 miles and, misinformation, I don't know, but I think his heart, I think JD Vance did one thing when he met Keir Starmer. He spotted him right away. He was onto Keir Starmer faster than anybody else I've seen. He knows what he is.
And you agree with his sentiment, even if his facts aren't perhaps necessarily correct? Okay.
I wish we had people in our country that would stand for us, and like JD Vance did.
Thank you, Peter.
And also, can I just
go ahead? Go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to say we live in a country where you can be arrested for being openly Jewish. That says
I'm not aware anyone's been arrested for being openly Jewish. I know the police said to someone, you are being openly Jewish, and that was Gideon Falter, and that was certainly a really big issue.
That was a protest, a Palestinian...
That's right, pro-Palestinian protest. No, it was pretty shameful. Peter, listen, thanks for your points. I really appreciate them. That's Peter in Liverpool there. Let's go to Steve in Crawley in Sussex. Steve, you're very welcome. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. Nice to speak to you.
You too.
It's reference these badges in the NHS.
Yes.
I'm agreeing with your fellow that said ban it all. They should just wear NHS lanyards.
Mm-hmm.
However, the whole problem, I think, does not stop the mindset of said doctor, said nurse, with whatever political belief they have.
Mm-hmm.
How is that going to stop a doctor with political beliefs?
Would you rather know what
mistreating?
Would you rather know what their views are? If they're wearing that badge, at least you know where you stand.
I think if they wear that badge, they need to have some kind of education system within the NHS to stop this kind of political beliefs, and you will treat everybody the same. Otherwise, what is happening, or will happen, and probably is happening, the NHS is going to go down the same road as the police recently with the Henry Novak case, who will decide immediately, you're Jewish, you're white, I'm not going to treat you very well, you're ethnic, I'm not going to treat you properly. If you die, so what? And that's the mindset of the NHS, people working in it, as with the police, as we found, needs changing. Not what badge you wear, because that won't change their mind if they don't wear a badge, if you see what I mean.
I see exactly what you mean, and some very real common sense there. Really interesting to hear your views. Steve and Crawley, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Gary's been in touch on text and says, Peter, during the campaign for the US presidential election, not only did the head of operations for the Labour Party boast on Twitter, I think it was LinkedIn actually, about sending nearly 100 party staff to the US to campaign for Kamala Harris, but Morgan McSweeney and other senior staff at Number 10 attended the Democratic Party conference, met Harris and briefed her campaign team on Labour's election-winning approach. How is that not interfering in another country's politics? Gary, you're absolutely correct. Deborah says the left will never accept how the British people feel. They're too focused on discrediting Farage or anyone who dares to disagree with them. Honestly, I'm just fed up with the lot of them, says Deborah. Penny in Essex says, good morning, Peter. Yes, Musk and Vance have every right to say what they're saying about the appalling murder of Henry Novak, because it might just make politicians take notice. Although I'm not holding my breath, but that vile murderer should rot in prison for the rest of his life. Another person says, anyone who thinks the poppy is a symbol of political division is a complete lunatic. The poppy is a symbol of remembrance and sacrifice. Yes, thank you for that. Steve says Vance's comments are broader. Yes, we can say that the murderer of Henry Novak was British, but first generation. If not first generation, then not properly integrated. Vance's commentary was about more than one generation of problems and more broadly than the UK. Steve, I'm happy to take that, certainly. David says, what a brilliant interview with Graham Stringer. I don't think I've ever heard a Labour MP talk so much sense, says David. Well, he certainly didn't miss and hit the wall verbally anyway when it came to Lord Hermer, and that clip is out on social media. You can see it now. I will retweet it from @Peter Cardwell. It's also at talkTV, where he was taking down and being very, very critical of his party colleague, Lord Hermer. Lots more to talk about, including with Amir Katecha. He's the Chief Executive of the Centre for Government Reform, a former diplomat as well. We'll talk about JD Vance and his comments. So much still to discuss. We'll also talk about Andy Burnham promising pubs a 20% rates cut if he becomes Prime Minister, and the UK struggling pubs pinning their hopes on England reaching the World Cup final, because that could mean 275 million quid in beer up for grabs. Plenty to talk about there. Loads to discuss right throughout the programme as well. We'll also talk about the Churchill banknotes, the US and Iran exchanging strikes in the Gulf, Putin saying there's no point meeting Zelensky over ending the Ukraine war. As always, I want to hear from you on everything that you want to say. Send us your voice note, send us your text, give me a ring and we'll have a chat on the phone. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who's been in touch on Twitter as well. I've just been having a look through some of the messages there during the break. Sue says, can you explain to us why we're only now hearing about Henry Novak's death when he was murdered in December? Well, the verdict came about 10 days ago, and when there are active proceedings, it's difficult to get the full story. Also, we didn't really know the full story until it all came out in court, and then when those court proceedings are over and that murderer has been sentenced to prison, well, then we can really talk about it, and we're not prejudicing a court case, Sue. So we would have known some of the detail then. If arrests are made and court proceedings are active and so on, it gets more difficult legally to talk about stuff, because obviously the last thing we would want to do would be for me or someone to make a comment that would prejudice a court case, and then you could say, well, actually this guy can't get a fair trial and therefore the things have to be abandoned. That's the last thing that we want to happen. We've got to be really careful about that from a legal perspective and stay within the law with all of that. So Now we know the full detail. Now the court proceedings are over. So that means we can talk about it more freely. It's a bit frustrating sometimes. Sometimes things happen, people want to talk about them, and I have to say to people, we can't talk about that for legal reasons. It frustrates me too as a broadcaster, but what's more important than journalism is justice, and that, I hope, is what Henry Novak's family have got now. Jules says the only threat to democracy is UK Labour. However, the Labour MP Graham Stringer is absolutely correct to say the Attorney General is incompetent and an idiot, in Jules's opinion. One of the few Labour MPs who has any sense and integrity. Well, let's talk about another politician now, and that is JD Vance, because he has put a post out about Henry Novak, about this whole controversy. He's blamed a mass invasion of migrants for Henry Novak's death. At the same time, the deputy leader of Labour, Lucy Powell, has said that Nigel Farage is a threat to democracy, calling for a misinformation clampdown. Amir Katecha is the chief executive of the Centre for Government Reform and a former diplomat. Amir, great to have you on the programme. What do you make of this controversy?
Hi, Peter.
Hi there.
Well, look, I think JD Vance's comments are not just him speaking out on a whim. He's actually reflecting a very deep sense in the MAGA movement and in the US government that the UK is losing its way a little bit and has some real deep problems, and they feel very strongly about them. And I think it's entirely legitimate for him and for figures in the US government to think that and to say so publicly. I think one thing I found slightly odd is people claiming that, you know, he's crossed some sort of diplomatic red line here. Actually, that's not the case. Countries routinely comment on human rights and domestic policies in other countries, and it's fine to do so.
Absolutely, because we have free speech. It's interesting, you've written a very good article for The Spectator. The former editor of that is Fraser Nelson. He's a very good journalist, but he's written a piece for The Times today where he says facts are being sidelined in a dangerous digital court. He's talked about a number of the different facts in regard to the Novak case. I just wonder if you think JD Vance is factually correct when he says that migration is to blame for Henry Novak's death. We know, for example, that the murderer was born in Southampton.
Yeah, exactly. So look, on the substance of what JD Vance has said, he talks a lot about mass migration. In this case, I think that is secondary to DEI overreach, right? Because as you say, Vikram Digwa, the murderer, was born here in the UK. I mean, you can have a debate about the extent to which this DEI that I'm speaking about has been influenced and in large part may have been created by immigration over time, because of course a lot of it is about ensuring that ethnic minorities here are treated in certain ways. But, you know, I think you can have a debate about that. I think, you know, the primary point I would make is whether you agree with what JD Vance has said or not. What I don't think you can disagree with is that he has a legitimate right to speak out.
Oh no, I totally agree with you on that, and we've you know, a number of our viewers and listeners have put that point. And even if he's wrong, or even if his facts aren't quite right, the sentiment is certainly carried. I wonder what you make as well within that. Within this idea of speech and who is accusing what of whom, or whom of what, I should say, of Lucy Powell, the Deputy Leader of Labour, who says that Nigel Farage is a threat to democracy. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's just another example of how, rather than talking about the substance of the issues, all too often the Labour Party and this government want to claim foul play, or want to claim that, you know, in this case, Lucy Powell saying that Farage is exploiting the algorithm. Well, what does that really mean? I mean, Farage absolutely has a good social media game. He's got, you know, far more TikTok followers than Lucy Powell, of course. And you know, social media is now part of the public square in modern democracy. So it's, of course, right and proper that parties and politicians use social media to try and get their message out. So I just wish Lucy Powell and the Labour Party just focus on the substance of the issues and take on Farage on that. Don't sort of try and claim that he's doing something illegitimate by pushing his message out on social media.
And it's interesting from Nigel Farage's perspective. I can't, of course, speak for him, but I would imagine that he is probably less amused, particularly when it comes to Twitter, with Elon Musk and his political rivals Restore Britain and their amplification on there by Elon Musk. And Elon Musk, the owner of Twitter, obviously, who is a big fan of Rupert Lowe and of Restore Britain. So there's another aspect of that as well. Also, I'm not sure what exploiting the algorithm actually means. I mean, is she actually implying that there's some sort of technical way in which Nigel Farage and Reform UK are exploiting that? Or are they simply saying, well, this is populism, you're giving people what they want, they're asking for more of it, and then more of Nigel Farage comes up in their algorithm, which they're perfectly entitled to do. I find either one of those is quite weird.
No, I agree with you. I mean, look, it's a very good point you make about Rupert Lowe. I mean, you know, if anyone is essentially has a political project which is being carried almost entirely by social media, it's Rupert Lowe and Restore. But interestingly, you know, Lucy doesn't take aim at him. Lucy Powell takes aim at Farage because, of course, he's the more potent electoral threat.
And perhaps she's happy with the fact that Restore Britain is having an impact on Reform UK's vote. It'll be very interesting to see what happens in Makerfield. And it appears now, the polling at the moment, as you know and I know, it's not that scientific anyway. You're dealing with a few hundred people. You can't really poll a single constituency. It's very, very difficult to do that from a polling perspective. Obviously it is. Obviously when we get the result of the Makerfield by-election in a couple of weeks' time, we'll know a lot more. But the indications would appear to be, and what a lot of anecdotal evidence from Labour people, from Restore people, from Reform people I've spoken to, is that Restore Britain is doing pretty well and may, in theory, keep out Robert Kenyon, the Reform UK candidate there. I'm actually speaking to Zia Youssef. He's on the programme tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I'll be speaking to him. But I wonder, I mean, it's interesting that Reform UK are in Lucy Powell's sights and Restore Britain don't seem to be a force that she is criticising in this anyway.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point, and I think it's very cynical on her part. I mean, I think, you know, she says that when she's, you know, knocking on doors and on the doorstep, she's hearing voters say untruths that they've picked up from social media. I don't think she actually gives any examples at all of what sort of untruths she's talking about. But look, I mean, look, it may be that voters occasionally might get things wrong. For example, you know, a few people might assume that Vikram Digwa was an asylum seeker rather than someone born in this country, and where those things happen, we should absolutely
and we all believe in and you're right, we all believe in the truth and we all believe in clarifying points, but you cannot expect every single voter to know every single detail about every single story. And people pick things up all the time incorrectly because they're not obsessed with politics. They're not obsessed with every single detail that is there. And I totally get that. And I've campaigned. I used to work as a special advisor. I've campaigned on the doorsteps in various elections. People say things to you. There was one kind of slightly amusing experience I had where a guy said, I was campaigning for Robert Buckland, who was then the MP for South Swindon no longer, and the guy said, well, I've never seen him around here. And I said, well, he's literally next door. Do you want to have a chat with him? Well, he's never been round here. And I said, yeah, but he's over there. I mean, he's literally there. Do you want to have a chat with him? You can have a chat if you want. Well, I've never seen my MP around here. I just, you know, it was just a sort of slightly brick wall kind of conversation. How do we get better? How do we get better at this, Amir?
Well, look, I think in some ways that there is an interesting argument to be made that social media is helping educate people about the issues in a way that we didn't have in the past, you know, because the reality is, you know, circulation of newspapers is down, less people are getting their news in that way. So look, I think that there's useful things like, you know, grok and fact checking, which is being done by people like Elon Musk. So of course he gets a very bad rep from the likes of Lucy Powell, but anyone who uses Twitter, you know, well knows that you can ask Grok to fact check things, and you have community notes. So all those things are really helpful. Look, I want nothing but the truth to air, but I just find this criticizing of people by Lucy for using social media better, frankly, than the Labour Party use it, is just cynical, and she also makes all sorts of claims without real evidence. I mean, she says that Reform are benefiting from bots and troll farms and all sorts of accusations, which I don't think she's given a shred of evidence for. So, I say focus on the issues, and of course we all want the truth to air, but I don't think Reform are doing anything wrong whatsoever by using social media to its maximum advantage.
Okay, thank you very much, Amir Katecha there, Chief Executive of the Centre for Government Reform. He's a former diplomat as well. Really appreciate him joining us. Leslie says Starmer didn't complain when Obama came to the UK to campaign against Brexit, saying we would be at the back of the queue for any deal if we left the EU. Paul in Worcester says Farage is not democratic, says Lucy Powell, who tried to cancel democratic local elections. That would be the Labour Party. That was stopped by Farage's actions. That is all correct, Paul. Ian in North Wales says, in regard to the NHS and badges, you go for treatment, not to witness a political view. Great show, says Ian. And Alex in Cardiff says, all we need to get rid of DEI, and use Martin Luther King's words, I have a dream that my children will not be judged by the colour of their skin, but by the content of their character. Things would be so much better, says Alex, if we did that. Hear, hear, totally agree with that. Let me just get to those other tweets that I had mentioned as well. On knives, Ian says, why can't I carry a penknife used for whatever I want as long as it's not threatening or stabbing? Then a ban is for everyone or not at all. And actually, the legal point is an interesting one on this, on carrying knives. And the kirpan, of course, the Sikh ceremonial knife there. And apparently it's not illegal to carry a knife. There are certain blades that are illegal to carry. For those carrying the kirpan, it would be for the defendant to raise religious reasons as a defence and prove it on the balance of probabilities. We do know, of course, that it wasn't the kirpan that was used to stab Henry Novak. It was a much larger blade. Sandy says, please tell Sebastian Labour did more than comment on American George Floyd. They knelt and continually tweeted what hypocrites they are for saying Vance shouldn't voice his views now. One of your guests, Kevin, says earlier on, suggested that foreign agencies are whipping up hate in order to raise public support for Reform UK, equating hatred with reform without proof that the two are linked cannot go unchallenged. It cannot be left to stand unquestioned. Joe says, on banknotes, as with everything now pulled to the far left, culture war highlights corrupted public consultations. We need voter ID, national insurance card, passport, etc. Law demanding people vote and direct democracy. They won't like the results. And Ed says, morning Peter, Starmer said that Reform using Novak family as a political pawn. What about Starmer making the family walk up to number 10 instead of driving them round the back to number 10? Two-faced Starmer. Well, really interesting you mentioned that, because I was on the phone to the number 10 press office on Thursday evening. I was speaking to another station actually about the Novak family coming to number 10, and number 10 were really keen, and they said, look, there's a private meeting, we're not telling you when it's happening, it's very private, da-da-da. Then they put out a statement after, and the family walked down Downing Street. Clearly not that private. Also, they let people know it was happening. Utterly odd. Anyway, we will talk in just a second about another Labour politician, Andy Burnham, promising pubs a 20% rate cut if he becomes Prime Minister. We'll speak to the co-founder of No to Labour MPs campaign and owner of the Hand Hotel and Pub. Stay with us.
Raleigh Callacane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Diana, thank you very much indeed for your message. Diana Harding says, a miserable wet Saturday. Turn the radio on to hear Peter Cardwell. A rare treat, as I don't usually get to hear the evening slot. Well, I am back in the evening, Diana. I'm sorry you don't make it in the evenings. You're more than welcome to listen on Catch Up or watch, wherever you watch or listen to the station. Whenever you do so, you're always welcome to do so. I'm back tomorrow between 10 and 1. We're going to speak to Zia Youssef from the Reform UK front bench, and we'll also speak to Claire Coutinho from the Conservatives. That's between 10 and 1 tomorrow. We'll have the debate desk as well. And from Monday to Friday, I'm back on my usual show between 7 and 10, just filling in for Alex Phillips, who's taking a well-earned break this weekend. Let's speak now about what Andy Burnham has been saying. He's promised pubs a 20% rate cut if he becomes Prime Minister. Well, Jonathan Greatorex is co-founder of No to Labour MPs campaign and owner of the Hand Hotel and Pub in Clonarmon. Jonathan, great to have you with us. What do you make of what Andy Burnham is saying? Could you possibly be saying yes to Labour MPs?
Well, look, I mean, I think we have to take it in context, because I think what we've got here is an enormous amount of government gaslighting. You know, at the moment, they're giving us this generous 15% discount. But of course, what they're not taking into account is the fact that in my case, my rates have gone up by 70%. And many businesses, many pubs across the country are seeing huge increases. I mean, some of them 3 figures. And so when they say, oh, we've cut, you know, the rates by 15%, that sounds great. But the reality is they're actually putting it up by far, far more. So a 20% rate cut would be great. That would bring most people's rates increase down to about maybe 60%.
Yeah. But it's still become a lot more difficult in the last 5 or 6 years in particular to run a pub, hasn't it?
It's becoming impossible. You know, our biggest burden is VAT, you know, because everything that we do is too expensive. You know, 20% at VAT is absolutely preposterous. You know, I tried to explain it to a group of MPs recently, where if I buy a steak, and we buy very, very good steak. If I buy a steak for £20 and I sell that steak for £20, I've immediately lost £4 because no VAT on me buying it, but I have to pay VAT on selling it. The whole system needs looking at.
Do you think Andy Burnham's the person to look at it? Do you think he gets it and understands what small businesses are doing? He's talking as well about hairdressers and other businesses. He says he wants to take them out of tax. There does seem to be a little bit more of an understanding, especially in the week where it was revealed that the Work and Pensions Secretary, every conversation he had, he said, was about who can we tax to pay for more benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the thing about this government, is that they don't understand that to be able to pay taxes, we have to make a profit. And profit is a dirty word. It's just extraordinary. So I just don't know. What do I think? Look, we went into the last election where Labour promised us the earth. They said that they were going to be the government of growth. They were going to support the industry, and they did exactly the opposite. So forgive me if I take a politician's manifesto with an enormous pinch of salt.
Well, I totally get that. The UK's struggling pubs are pinning their hopes on the England reaching the World Cup final. Certainly not all pubs, of course, have screens in them, but many of them do. But even the cost of watching those games, although some of them will be in free-to-air, of course, as well, is a big issue in recent years. That's gone up too, hasn't it? But if you get people through the door, you and other pubs, that could be a real boon for you in the next month to 6 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. I mean, it's any sporting event is good for the industry. But of course, I mean, in my case, we can't afford Sky because the cost doesn't justify us having it. We're a rural country pub, and it's not worth it. But when you think about inner city pubs, they're paying thousands of pounds a month for Sky, and you've got to be taking a lot of money to make that work. So I think yes. I mean, let's be honest. This country, we need a boost. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yes.
We need some good news. We need something because we've got this moribund government in charge. They're a mendacious lot of people, and we've just got to get on. We need something to make us smile for once.
I've got something to make you smile. It's gonna make your day, Jonathan. It's going to be a really, really wonderful thing because legally, because we've mentioned Andy Burnham on the Makerfield by-election, I now have to read out the names of all the candidates in that by-election by law. Would you like to stay? You can either go now or you can stay with me while I read out those names. What would you?
I'll stay with you. I'll feel your pain.
Okay. This is by law. I've got to do this. It's on the 18th of June, the Makerfield by-election. Jake Austin is running for the Liberal Democrats, Count Binface for the Count Binface Party, Andy Burnham for the Labour Party, Dan Clark for the Libertarian Party, John Dyer is an independent, Ed Gemmell for the Climate Party, Paul Gould is an independent, Alan Howling Lord Hope, the official Munster Raving Loony Party, Robert Kenyon for Reform UK, Robert Pownell for Protect the Wild, Rebecca Shepherd for Restore Britain, Sarah Wakefield for the Green Party, Peter Ward for Restore EU, and Michael Winstanley for the Conservative Party. You're nothing if not informed, Jonathan.
Absolutely, and I've seen some of Count Binface's policies, and some of them almost make sense, I have to say.
Well, when he talks about croissants being under £1, I think that's something I can get on board with. Jonathan, listen, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. That's Jonathan Greatorex, who's co-founder of the No to Labour MPs campaign and owner of the Hand Hotel and Pub in Clamornan. Let's get a couple of messages here. Gary says Burnham saying he'll reduce business rates for pubs by 20% and doing it if he gets elected into number 10. That's a different matter. Don't forget Labour's a party who hasn't delivered its manifesto. He's a political chameleon, so he'll say whatever gets him votes. The British public, other than the brainwashed lefties, are all wise to politicians now. Graham says maybe NHS staff, maybe the NHS staff should wear badges so it's obvious who hates you and you're wary of them, says Graham in Bushy. And Sean in Bridlington. Sean, I haven't heard from you in a while. It's really good to hear from you. I hope you're very, very well. Andy Burnham wants to let illegal immigrants work. That negates anything of merit that he may say about anything else, says Sean in Bridlington. Well, we're going to continue talking about what you want to talk about and to take your calls as well. A bit more time in the 12 o'clock hour to take some calls. We're going to go stateside to talk about JD Vance. We're also going to hear from Peter Blexley, voice of common sense, former Metropolitan Police detective as well. Lucy Powell calling for more regulation of big tech, saying Reform UK importing the worst populist tactics from around the world. We're going to talk about Henry Novak's death as well. Also, the defence issues and the Churchill banknotes as well. It is, of course, the anniversary of D-Day today. Great bravery and distinction shown by our soldiers and other military personnel back then, 82 years ago. And the US and Iran exchanging strikes in the Gulf in the latest test of the ceasefire. We'll talk through all of that and get your thoughts as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell in for Alex Phillips. Today and tomorrow between 10 and 1, Downing Street is hit out after the Vice President JD Vance has posted about Henry Novak's death. This controversy continues over a week now since the sentencing of Henry Novak's murderer. The race row continues. JD Vance blaming a mass invasion of migrants for Henry Novak's death, although the person who murdered him was actually born in Southampton. Similarly, the Labour deputy leader Lucy Powell has said that Nigel Farage, in her view, is a threat to democracy. Can the deputy leader of the party that tried to postpone all of the, or a lot of the local elections, can they really talk about a threat to democracy? We'll talk about the US and Iran exchanging strikes in the Gulf, the latest test of the ceasefire there. Putin says there's no point in meeting Zelensky over the end of the Ukraine war. We'll also talk about the Bank of England dropping Churchill after being told he was elitist. That comes 82 years after World War II's D-Day landings. Of course, it was 82 years ago today. We'll speak to Colonel Simon Diggins, the military and defence analyst, about that. So much to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. I want to hear from you as well. Please do give me a ring. 0344 499 1000. There's plenty to discuss. Ciara and Rory are on the phones today, and if you give them a ring, they will have a chat with you. You make your point, and then we'll ring you back between now and 1 o'clock to get you on the air. 0344 499 1000 is the number to do that. You can text me at 72222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell, send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss between now and 1 here on Talk. Steve is keen on Count Binface. We've been talking about him. He's one of the many candidates, I've read them out twice during this programme, who are standing in the Makerfield by-election. Steve is a fan of Count Binface for the entertainment value. I would never dream of suggesting how people vote in the Makerfield by-election, not only because that would be a breach of electoral law and land me in a lot of trouble, but I will confess on a previous occasion when Count Binface stood for the Mayor of London, I voted for him because you have two votes, and I was a member of the Conservative Party at the time, and I voted for the Conservative candidate Sean Bailey, and I also voted for Count Binface because I had a second vote, and I liked his policy on keeping croissants under £1, because I don't mind a croissant, as my frame would suggest. Now then, on to serious matters, which include Downing Street hitting out after JD Vance, the Vice President of America, posting about Henry Novak. He's blamed a mass invasion of migrants for Henry Novak's death. I'd like to hear in a second how that has gone down stateside. Steve Gill, the former White House official who served in the Bush and Clinton administrations, is with us, and we'll get to him in just a second. But I want to talk to Peter Bleksley first, who's the former Metropolitan Police detective, our crime commentator here at Talk, author, speaker. And Peter, I just wonder, I mean, this is now about 10 days on from the verdict. This is still a very live political debate. Some of the detail, the really horrendous detail, still coming out. I talked about that earlier, about the filming, the 5-minute film that the murderer made that wasn't even shown in court because it was too horrific to show that. Peter, this has really been a hugely controversial murder, the handling of it, the politicisation of it. About sort of 9-10 days on from the verdict, what is your take on where we stand right now when it comes to the politics, the policing of all of this in regard to Henry Novak's murder?
My big headline thought on this tragic murder of young Henry is that this story will run and run and run. And I'll tell you why. His mother, Digwa's mother, is yet to be sentenced. She's been found guilty. She's yet to be sentenced for assisting her son on the night of that murder by removing the murder weapon. Digwa, his brother and his father all face further charges of possessing other weapons, so there'll be further trials there. There will, of course, be an inquest into Henry's death, which will attract huge media and public interest, quite rightfully. And so just with those factors alone, this story is not going away. And moreover, this story should never go away, because young Henry's life and his appalling death needs to be remembered by this nation as a reminder of so much that is wrong about this nation.
What does it show us about what's wrong with this nation, especially when you have a Prime Minister who says there is no such thing as two-tier policing?
While we're talking about the Prime Minister, I would just like to say that his behaviour and his words this week have fundamentally shown how he is absolutely unfit for high office. He has chosen to skew the words and the meaning of what Henry's father said. Henry's father said he did not want his son's death to create division. He did not say he wanted his death to end discussion. On the contrary. And of course, there's been a lot of discussion, but Starmer has repugnantly and perniciously tried to shut it down by sending people on a guilt trip which simply is not there. Utterly appalling. This case does need discussing. So many brilliant people have come forward in recent days telling their experiences at the hands of Hampshire Police, their experiences, the training handed down by Hampshire Police, the perverse attitudes that prevail, and so much more. Long live the name, the experience, the memory, and the honour of young Henry Novak.
I'll come back to you in a second, Peter, but I want to go to Steve Gill now, the former White House official who served in the Bush and Clinton administration. Specifically, Steve, great to see you, by the way, about the comments of J.D. Vance. He has blamed a mass invasion of migrants for Henry Novak's death. He's been criticised by Downing Street for doing so. The murderer of Henry Novak was born in Southampton. He was not himself an immigrant. What do you make of Vance's comments? Was he right to make them? Steve, sorry, we just had a problem with the line there. Can you just start again?
Yeah, great to see you, Peter, and thank you for having me. I think what J.D. Vance is referring to, it is the culture that has been created, the culture of violence and the culture of two-tier policing that has been embraced by the police in England over the last couple of years as they treat the invasion of the immigrants different than those who are the traditional citizens. And I think in this particular case, whether it was an individual who was a part of this invasion or whether it is the culture of violence that's been created by this invasion, I think those are two distinct things. And the way that this has been treated by the police is the way they've treated honest, decent British citizens versus how they've treated the invaders in other situations of violence. And I think that's what he's pointing out.
I mean, you have more nuance in your answer there in just a few seconds than perhaps J.D. Vance had. Should he have got his facts right before intervening in this?
That is always helpful. Again, they didn't call me and ask me for advice before they speak. They ought to be thinking about that in the future. But I think that what you're seeing is the focus on J.D. Vance is saying what many in England are thinking. They just can't speak it like he did, or they'll get arrested. They'll get charged for speaking the truth, or at least expressing their feelings.
Is that a fair point to make, Peter Bleksley, that there isn't the same free speech here as there was? We've heard from J.D. Vance, the Vice President, on a number of occasions now. He talked at the Munich Security Conference last year about similar issues in regard to this, Peter.
And his deliberate tactic of trying to shut down free speech in this country without actually bringing in any further legislation. Whenever he speaks, he bemoans, he tarnishes huge swathes of people who simply express opinions that he does not agree with. Therefore, he tries to shut down free speech. It's very devious and pernicious. And I meet so many people that say to me, thank you, Peter, for speaking up, because we can't. And I say, no, you're wrong. You can. Stay within the boundaries of the law. You are free to speak within those boundaries, and they are very widely set boundaries, as this channel exhibits more than anybody else, because it has free-speaking voices on it. We are free to speak, know the law, know the boundaries, don't fall foul of them. But even if there are boundaries, push and push and push again.
It's interesting that Henry Novak was talked about, and JD Vance talking on X, on Twitter himself, Steve, talking about the righteous anger over Henry's murder, stating Henry Novak died the same way a civilization dies, abandoned, handcuffed by authorities who neither trusted nor cared for him, and accused of hate crimes he did not commit. He would still be alive if the last few generations of European elites had stood their ground against the politics of self-hatred and the mass invasion of migrants, many of whom despise the West and the people who love it. Is that a fair sentiment, Steve?
I think it's absolutely fair and accurate. And keep in mind, this is not the first time that J.D. Vance or the Trump administration have tied U.S. policy and English relationships to free speech. I mean, just a year or so ago, they were pointing out, and I think it was kind of odd, but they were trying to tie free speech to trade and tariff discussions, which is a bit of a reach. But I think that what he's pointing out is what the Trump administration sees is the cultural decline, not only in England, but you look at the rioting throughout France, you look at other nations that have allowed the free embrace of radical invasion by illegal aliens and done nothing about it. And I think there is a frustration certainly in England. There is an increasing frustration in Paris today. And I think the comments from the administration are simply reflecting that.
Steve, thank you. I'll leave it with you now and say thank you. That's Steve Gill, the former White House official, on J.D. Vance's comments there. Peter Blexley is still with us. I just have a couple more thoughts for him. Peter, I just wonder what the police need to do now in this country in order to get back that trust, in order to not be accused of two-tier policing. There are always going to be people who aren't happy with how the police have acted in certain aspects of things. But this case, I would argue more than any other of my time in the 5.5 years I've been presenting these programmes, really has lit a fuse, I think, of a strong sentiment, annoyance, a lot of worry, and of course there has been some violent action against Southampton. Police in Southampton, 11 officers were injured, but on a police dog, but the vast majority of those protesters completely peaceful. There'll be further questions to ask, but what should the police do now, in your opinion, Peter?
Well, what they need to do, they will sadly never do, and that is to rein back from this pernicious culture of diversity, equality and inclusion training, which encourages, in fact, enforces bias, racial bias. It tells officers to behave differently towards one group of people than another. That is discriminatory. It is bias. It is racism, plain and simple. But they will never rein back from this because the liberal, fluffy wokerati are in charge. This is the nonsense that they peddle. Policing needs to return to the position whereby it enforces the law without fear or favour. It shows no favour to any particular group, no matter what demographic they may come from. Policing should see one colour and one colour only. That is blue, the blue of the thin blue line. And it needs to go back to enforcing the ABC of policing when it turns up at dynamic events like the murderous stabbing of young Henry. Accept nothing, believe no one, and check everything. But before you let me go, may I please just say this one line on this most important day, the 82nd anniversary of D-Day. On D-Day, 160,000 heroic troops invaded the beaches of Normandy. Since 2018, 200,000 illegal immigrants have invaded the shores of the UK.
Peter, a sobering statistic there. It's actually the first time we will be talking about D-Day on the 82nd anniversary a little bit later on, actually, with Colonel Simon Dickens as well. A very sobering statistic. Peter, it's the first time I think I've spoken to you on air since I went to your brilliant show, absolutely superb, The Undercover Detective, The Makings of a Murderer. I know you're about halfway through your nationwide tour, your tour actually of the British Isles. I saw you in Belfast. What's coming up next for you? Because I know the stories you tell them so brilliantly. My parents went as well. They had a fantastic time, as did a very good friend of mine. And I cannot recommend your stage show highly enough. Just tell us the venues you'll be there in the next few days, especially if people want to get some tickets.
Thank you. You are very kind. I'm performing the show at the New Brighton Pavilion back on Merseyside on Wednesday. I'm at the Warwick Arts Centre on Thursday. And then the week after that, I've got 5 dates in Scotland, from Kirkcaldy to Aberdeen to Arbroath to Edinburgh and to Glasgow.
And actually, a big part of your show is a very, very interesting and unsolved murder in Scotland. And I'm sure people can read more about that at your website, peterblexley.com. Peter, I hope that the show goes really well. I'd highly recommend anybody who's anywhere near any of those venues to go. I know a lot of viewers and listeners have gone and have messaged me about that. I know they've messaged you too. Peter, well done, and thank you for your commentary today and every day. That is Peter Blexley there, who is the former Metropolitan Police detective. What do you make of what he said? 0344 499 1000. Amy from Raleigh says you have the British public and people from across the pond all saying the same thing, and the penny still doesn't drop with Starmer and is excuse of a party for those working people. What a joke. Politicians are caught lying. They should have to resign and forfeit any future benefits, says MJ. So thank you for all of that. We'll take some calls, text, tweets and voice notes after the break. Get your call in right now and get on the air between now and 1 o'clock. Whatever you think, whatever's on the tip of your tongue, you're shouting at the radio, you're saying, yeah, that Peter Blexley's right, or maybe that Peter Blexley's wrong, or maybe you think I'm talking nonsense, or you think I'm right. Whatever your view, I want to hear what it is. We can disagree without being disagreeable. That's what we do in every single one of my shows on Talk today, tomorrow between 10 and 1. And right through the week between 7 and 10, my usual show, The Evening Exchange. So pick up the phone, 0344 499 1000.
Varda Kalakane was a 32-year-old black man. He murdered 3 white people. Not once in any part of the conversation or reporting was there any racial profiling or even the question raised.
I don't want to drag this boy onto the issues, not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for.
35 years I've been doing this. I've never seen a moment when most of mainstream media and most of mainstream politics was more out of touch with the country than over this issue. Quite extraordinary.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Nat in Tel Aviv, who's been back in touch and says, as far as the US meddling in UK politics, it is often thanks to the likes of Elon Musk and it is often thanks to the likes of Elon Musk that many, even in Britain, get to hear about the two-tier policing, etc., in the UK in the first place. Your disgraceful Prime Minister's time would be better spent responding to and meeting with the mother of Rhiannon White, in Nat's opinion. Let's hear a voice note from Neil on JD Vance's comments.
Cardi B, good morning and welcome back. Whilst I fully agree with JD Vance's comments, I do have some issues with being lectured to by a US senior government figure. If you look at all the problems we face in the UK today through DEI, through woke, through identity politics, through BLM, all of this is being imported from the US. So I really don't think they got any right to lecture us on how to run the country. But once again, I think what he's saying is absolutely correct, unfortunately. So it's a bit of a paradigm.
Neil, very interesting comments there. Thank you. I'm coming to James in Staffordshire and Jill in Cornwall on the calls in just a second, but we have some breaking news, and that is that David Sullivan has announced his resignation as joint chairman and director of West Ham Football Club with immediate effect, in a statement saying he has been made aware of the impending publication of serious historic allegations. Well, when that happens on a Saturday afternoon, I can tell you as a journalist for 20 years, that means some sort of Sunday newspaper is about to publish something pretty explosive in regard to allegations against David Sullivan. I'm sure he would deny any allegations against him, but of course they haven't been made just yet. But that is the breaking news, that David Sullivan has announced his resignation as joint chairman and director of West Ham with immediate effect. The statement says he has been made aware of the impending publication of serious historic allegations. We'll keep you totally across anything we hear about that, and when the papers drop tonight, no doubt there'll be some commentary on that, perhaps even on the show tomorrow. I'm on between 10 and 1, and I should say I'm here all week, back in my usual slot between 7 and 10, Monday to Friday. As promised, let's go to the calls. James in Staffordshire first on JD Vance. James, you're very welcome to the programme. What are your thoughts about what the Vice President has said?
Hello, Peter. Long time no talk to. How you doing?
It's good to chat to you again, James. You well?
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Good.
Right, I agree in theory with the comments that JD Vance made, but the downside is, I mean, America invented DEI, and a lot of democratic states have it even worse than we do.
Is he to blame for that, though, James? Is that his fault?
Well, no. I mean, as you know yourself, each state in America is run like its own separate country.
Yeah.
Does its own laws. So there was a case in Chicago where there was a blonde Ukrainian girl, refugee, sitting there on a bus minding her own business, and an African-American 2 seats behind came up and slit her throat. The chap had been stopped that day with a knife and let go. The guy had been arrested about 21 times altogether, and this was just a mindless... There was no motive for the murder. It happened the same in Florida with a pregnant woman. The guy was given $3,000 bail for stabbing another guy, and then came out and stabbed his wife and child.
Goodness me. I mean, I'm not familiar with those cases, but there are so many cases, of course, James, where these things just don't work the way they're meant to. And I know what you mean. I suppose he is a symbol of America. He is the Vice President, and who is he to lecture us, essentially? But as many people are saying, well, who are we to lecture him? I mean, we have plenty of views on American politics, and we've had people, including the Labour Party, some Conservatives as well, but 100 people from the Labour Party who went over to campaign for Kamala Harris. I mean, what do you make about the fact that we're essentially telling the Americans what to do when our country is many things but far from perfect?
No, and I quite agree. Can I just make a very quick, small statement, nothing derogatory? I'd like to send my hand of friendship out to the Sikh community, who have always worked for this country, always integrated. This is the first time I've ever heard of this kind of crime or statistic. So I'd like to hand my...
Well, I'm really glad you've done that, actually, and I know that incidents of racism against Sikh people have gone up, and that is dreadful, because this person, this murderer, who happens to be a Sikh, it's nothing to do with his faith. And actually, interestingly, I mean, there are elements, obviously, with his race, and I'm not denying that was part of the police response. I'm not saying that for a second, but it is not a Sikh thing to go around stabbing people at all. And the Sikh community, as you correctly say, are usually an extremely law-abiding community. I know a number of Sikhs who are great people, and that is something we need to sort of keep in mind in all of this, certainly, don't we?
Yeah, the downside is that through unconscious bias, but the unconscious bias the other way, if you understand what I mean.
Yes, I do.
They've had it drilled in that any person of colour is a victim, any person who is white is a perpetrator. So now the default setting, they didn't even put handcuffs on the guy once they twigged on that the other fellow had been stabbed.
I know what you mean, and that is just absolutely disgraceful. I'm trying to find... Oh, yes, here we are. I found it. Sorry, I've just been looking for this. Really interesting part, actually, just to make on that Sikh element of things. But the kirpan, the knife that some Sikhs were around their neck. The killer had one around his neck, but as the Sikh Federation has pointed out correctly, he was in the habit of walking around with a second knife, a 21-centimetre dagger, and even if it was religious, the judge said it would make no difference to the verdict. That's what he was convicted of. He was convicted of possession of a bladed weapon as well as murder, and the judge actually added 8 years for 10 aggravating factors. Among them, he said that he had abused the privilege extended to Sikhs and dishonoured his religion. That became a 21-year minimum. So religion actually made a sentence longer, not shorter.
Yeah, and it's strange though, it's still the minimum sentence that they could get away with. I worked for the police for 20 years as a civilian, and it shocks. I've got many police friends still, and it shockens and saddens me the way that the society has forced the police into doing something. They want to act without fear or favour. But when you've got, in the good old days, they used to recruit from the armed forces.
Yeah, as they should do now. As they should do now. I mean, this nonsense that you need a university degree to be a police officer, it's rubbish. It's complete nonsense.
Yeah. And they used to promote on ability, and the sergeant's exam was tough, and you had to go through every single department if you wanted to be an inspector, this, that, and the other. But they fast-tracked university students. And let's look at the statistics of, for instance, the Palestinian cause. How many students support that? How many students support, from the river to the sea nonsense?
And we just need them. You're absolutely right, James. You make some really, really good points on a variety of topics there, actually. We need impartial policing, absolutely no doubt about that. James, really good to talk to you again. Do give me another ring before too long. I will go to Jill in Cornwall, who's patiently waiting, in just 1 second, but we have more on David Sullivan, who stepped down as the West Ham joint chairman over serious historic allegations. He's resigned from his role as joint chairman of West Ham United after being made aware of the impending publication of serious historic allegations. The club has said it is understood none of the allegations relate to West Ham or any of its operations. The club added, a statement from David Sullivan said, I've recently become aware that factually incorrect and entirely false decades-old allegations concerning my personal life are due to be broadcast and published. West Ham were relegated from the Premier League last month. Jill, apologies to keep you waiting. You're very patient. What would you like to say? You're very welcome to the programme.
Well, Peter, it's perfectly all right. I enjoyed listening to what was said. Look, I agree with what JD Vance said. I do. I'm sorry, but since this country has allowed the boats to float across and people to enter this country, people we don't know about, what their intentions are, nothing.
But the guy who killed Henry Nowak, the murderer, was born in Southampton.
Well, it doesn't make any difference.
But he's not a migrant.
Well, no, I know it. I know he wasn't. But people who live in this country that have different views and different religions and feel differently about things than we do. Well, I mean, they walk around with knives. We don't.
I mean, some white people walk around with knives too, Jill.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that we have a situation now where we have courts in this country that have been set up by Muslims. They deal with their own justice, but we have a justice system anyway. Always have done.
Yeah.
Now we've got these courts.
Totally agree with you. Those Sharia courts should not be allowed to exist. Absolutely not.
No, and I'm not saying that it's always down to immigration, but what's happening is with immigration is that the culture in this country is diminishing. Mm-hmm. We now have all these cultures that are sort of taking place. People wanting to do certain things because of their culture. And because thousands of people live in this country that we don't know who they are, what they are. We're paying them, housing them. We can't even look after our own people, and we're the ones paying the bills.
What do you make of JD Vance himself? And, some people, Jill, have said that he shouldn't have said this. He's Vice President of the United States. He should stick to his own internal affairs rather than commenting on ours. What do you make of that?
Well, he's got the courage to say what this country's politicians haven't got the courage to say. I know he's a bit outspoken. He's not necessarily the most liked person ever, but he's made a comment that a lot of people in this country will be able to relate to. And when you see what happened with that young boy, I'm horrified. I can't watch it without I feel sad. when you see what happened and the way the police handled it, then something is going wrong with this country and the way that we're handling it.
Jill, thank you very much for your thoughts there. That's Jill in Cornwall there. If you'd like to get on the air yourself between now and 1 o'clock, please do give me a ring. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. There's so much to talk about in this issue. It's also the 82nd anniversary of D-Day. 160,000 servicemen, of course, who defended our country, and Colonel Simon Diggins will be with us in a second, the military and defence analyst. We'll also talk about the US and Iran exchanging strikes in the Gulf and the latest test of the ceasefire. We will talk about that. We'll talk about Putin as well, saying there's no point meeting Zelensky over ending the Ukraine war as well. I think we have a call from Cindy in Michigan for an American perspective just before that. Cindy, you're very welcome to the programme. What do you make of your Vice President's comments?
Well, first I want to say a big welcome back to you.
Thank you, Cindy.
You. Yes, and I think that the comments are, I think that Vance commenting, number one, completely appropriate. And the reason why I feel this way is because we're supposed to be allies. And we've had similar things going on in our countries, deaths that have happened in ways that they shouldn't have happened.
Yes, yes.
So
You're absolutely right.
We have that in common.
But at the same time, Cindy, this perpetrator, this murderer, wasn't an immigrant. So is he factually correct here?
I feel that he was, because we both have in our countries lots of migrants. So in that respect, I think that it was appropriate. You know, he's culturally, the murderer was culturally a Sikh. And generally there's a lot of Sikhs that come from other countries.
Yeah, although most Sikhs, of course, are completely peaceful, and it was kind of almost against his faith that this happened. But
right, they are.
I just wonder, and Cindy, I mean, it's fascinating with J.D. Vance as a political figure. Do you think he could be the next president?
I do.
Okay.
Oh, do I? Boy, do I. I love him. I watch him closely, and I've never thus far had a problem with anything that he's done.
Okay.
And I also want to say, you know, that I feel really sad about. It's affected me.
Yeah.
The way that Henry Novak died. It's personally affected me. He shouldn't have died this way.
You're totally, you're totally right.
God bless him and rest in peace to him. And I feel bad for his family.
Well, thank you. That is a lovely sentiment, and a sad sentiment, but a very kind sentiment on which to end that call. Cindy in Michigan in the United States, I really appreciate her giving us a call from the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. We'll talk, as I say, about the US and Iran exchanging strikes in the Gulf in the latest test of the ceasefire. Also about Churchill being dropped from the £5 note after people saying that it is elitist to have Winston Churchill. I'm very, very happy that Winston Churchill was the Prime Minister during the Second World War because we won it, and I think a lot of that was down to him. Plenty more to talk about with all of this. We'll take more of your calls as well. Stay with us here on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, President Trump has been talking about Iran. He wants to be out quickly. That hasn't happened so far, of course, as this has dragged on for nearly 100 days. Let's hear what the president has been saying.
We're at a point we're going to come out of Iran very quickly, and it's going to be very strong, one way or the other, whether it's a piece of paper or the very tough way, okay? The very tough way is maybe the easier way, but we're going to come out, and your fertilizer prices are going to go way down, just like they were 4 months ago. Your fertilizer's down, your energy's down, your oil, your gas is all coming way down.
The president speaking in Chippewa Falls in Wisconsin. So he was there at a sort of agricultural fair that he was talking about there. And of course, the real world implications are things that are being affected and felt by so many Americans in all of this. He also said he wanted to move very fast on Iran and make sure that there was a lot of momentum behind this. Let's talk a little bit about this with Simon Diggins now, Colonel Simon Diggins, the military and defence analyst. Are we any further on this, especially when the US and Iran have exchanged strikes in the Gulf in the latest test of the ceasefire? Iranian drones and radar sites have been targeted. Iran have fired missiles at the US bases in the Gulf. Simon, great to see you, by the way.
Peter, good afternoon to you. Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is we're not sure. I mean, it's very interesting that piece we had on from President Trump, very much focused on domestic pressures, inflation, fertilizer prices, oil prices, and that's the real challenge he's actually got. Internally in his own country, he's not only got the statement earlier on there'll be no forever wars in the Middle East, which is one of his election promises, but he's now, his domestic audience, people who might otherwise support him, are now feeling the pinch from the wars that are ongoing. So real pressure from there. But the Iranians don't have any particular reason to give way. They put various objections in the way. There are probably ways to negotiate what's going on in the Straits of Hormuz, but they're very, very reluctant to allow Israel, particularly, but also Israel and President Trump together, to completely suppress Hezbollah. And that's now seen as a major blocker in terms of the conversations that are running in that part of the Middle East as well.
Yes, on Monday it'll be 100 days from the start. Trump had talked about wanting to exit Iran quickly. Let's hear a little bit more of what the president said.
They are so desperate to make a deal. Why haven't they made a deal with you yet?
Because it's a very hard thing for them. They've had great independence. They've dealt with very weak and ineffective leadership on behalf of the United States and other countries, frankly, that allowed them to get away with murder. And I think they can't believe they're in the situation where they've been virtually decapitated.
But if they're so desperate, Mr. President, why haven't they said yes to the terms you're proposing?
Strong, they're proud. There are things they never thought they'd be doing that they're going to have to do. They've got no choice. And it takes a little while. You know, you're talking about 47 years of getting away with whatever they wanted. I mean, this should have been done long ago.
President Trump speaking to NBC's Meet the Press. That interview will be aired tomorrow. What do you make of what he said there, Simon?
I mean, I basically agree with him. I mean, I think the Iranian regime has been a nightmare right from the very beginning. And he's quite right to highlight this has been going on for some 47 years. He's also correct in terms of when he talks about the Iranian attitude in terms of their independence and their pride. I mean, I think one of the challenges we've got, we're dealing with an authoritarian regime like Iran, is how inward-looking it actually is. It struggles, therefore, to find out and think how other people think, and there's no question about it. They've been saving for sort of regional dominance over the area. They've talked about sort of opposing Israel, supporting the Palestinians, but that's really just been an excuse. What it's enabled them to do is establish proxies in the west of the Mediterranean, and also try and give them the leadership of the Islamic world, which they've tried for as well. That is all now up for debate, up for grabs. And what they're facing, and what I think President Trump's been threatening with, is effectively the elimination of 47 years of their dominance, and that's why they're very reluctant to compromise.
Simon, I wonder if we could talk to you about another conflict. Vladimir Putin says he doesn't see any point in meeting Zelensky after the Ukrainian leader requested a face-to-face talk over ending the war between the two nations. Are they any further, or does Putin have a point that maybe another meeting isn't necessarily going to happen or should happen because of the impasse, and perhaps the positions of both sides are just very well understood.
I think the challenge for President Putin again is recognising the situation he's in. The challenge that we've got is that he still controls. We should never forget this. 20% of Ukraine, which he didn't have prior to starting the war in February 2022. So he's taken a lot of territory already. So he sees himself as the winner in that respect. His economy is in trouble, but it's not completely disastrous. I mean, the recent boost they've had with oil revenues, again, from the fighting in the Middle East, and some easing of sanctions gives him money from there. But he's reorganised his economy onto a war footing basis. And he's also making some interesting changes there as well. Less emphasis on what you might call the kind of heavy metal end of war fighting, and a significant boost to drone production. I mean, the figures that they are looking to try and produce, and these are the Ukrainian figures about what Russia's doing, is something like 7 million plus drones per year. That's 20,000 drones per day being produced by the Russian defense industry. That's a staggering number. They're firing at the moment some 600 to 700 a day, but 20,000 drones a day, and they're also recruiting specifically soldiers to do that. So I think Putin sees himself as being able to hold this position for a considerable period of time. Uncomfortable, certainly. Casualties are not good, but he can hold it for a long position. And I think that's a challenge that President Zelensky's got with Ukraine. It's how do you actually break through that? I mean, as undoubtedly Ukraine, brave defenders, can hold the Russians really for a long, long time. They might even be able to match that 20,000 a day of drones being produced. But can they change the paradigm? Can they actually make an operational or strategic breakthrough? And then I think there's a huge question mark over it. So Putin, he just sits there. And he just gets more and more uncomfortable, but he doesn't really have to move.
It's a very fair point. Tell us about this country and the Royal Navy's flagship £3 billion aircraft carrier. It's broken down again. HMS Prince of Wales docked in southwest Norway, and there have been issues that have been identified to fix it, but it doesn't say a huge amount about our defence readiness, does it?
No, it doesn't. Unfortunately, that whole class of ships, both Queen Elizabeth II and the Prince of Wales, have had numerous problems, and it appears to be the same thing. It appears to be the propeller shaft on that particular ship. Big question marks over about the manufacturing and design and everything that goes with it. And I think here's also an interesting, point about defence investment, defence procurement, and you know that I'm somebody who's very much in favour of giving additional resources to that. But there is a question mark about the quality of our production and the quality of our defence investment and where it goes in the future. And even those who I think are pro an increase in defence expenditure are very reluctant just to let money be poured into our defence industry, who I'm afraid have not covered themselves in glory over a number of issues, whether they be aircraft carriers, whether it be the Ajax, whether it be some of the aircraft that have been produced. So, just pouring good money into a bottomless hole, which they can't seem to fix, I think needs to be sorted out at the same time. So, yeah, disappointing for the Royal Navy, but actually bigger questions about our defence industry and whether it's actually up to standard.
Some of the last surviving UK veterans are commemorating the anniversary of D-Day, 82 years since the Allied invasion of northern France in World War II. There are a veteran called Kenneth Hay, who is 100 years old, says, to most people coming here, they're just a series of names. To people like me, they're people. I can see their faces. There's a stark reminder in all of that. It comes as well as we know that Churchill is to be dropped from the £5 note because he's seen as a divisive character. Surely Churchill is one of the most uniting characters, especially when it comes to the freedoms we all have, the freedom you and I have to talk about, to criticise the government, to talk about all sorts of things, the kind of things that the freedoms that were fought for by people like Kenneth Hay and indeed by Churchill.
Yeah, I think the coincidence is there, and I think we've seen events. And I listened to earlier bits of your programme when you're talking about the horrible murder of Henry Novak and indeed his reaction. People just asking, where is my country? Where is the country I fought for? I find it deeply distressing that you go through these awful events, and there are people who can't recognise that for all his faults, and Winston Churchill was a great man, but he was not without his faults. But for all his faults, he led and fought us against fascism for 5 years, and to have him removed because somehow he's elitist just shows we've lost the plot completely. And for those veterans who are surviving and for their near family, I think this must be deeply distressing. It distresses me. But for them, it must be absolutely devastating to think why did I do it? Why did all my men die alongside me? It really, really upsets me.
Simon, thank you. Really appreciate that. Colonel Simon Diggins, military and defence analyst. Obviously, you've a very senior officer in the UK Army previously as well. What do you make of what he said there? 0344 499 1000. Take more calls, texts, tweets and voice notes after the break. Stay with us.
I think our candidate, Rob Kenyon, is a strong local candidate. You have to have a mixture in Westminster. I always say this, you need a mixture of common sense, life experience politicians like myself. And then you also, of course, need your, super intelligent geniuses to maybe write the laws and enact the policies that we want to see in place.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who has been in touch, including Leslie, who says, did Starmer honestly think people of the UK would not be outraged at beautiful Henry's death? Amanda says, I feel that the country is now reaching a turning point. The British people can only be pushed so far before their natural instincts of fairness and patriotism come to the fore. The more Farage is hounded, the more popular he will become, says Amanda. Caroline in Glasgow says, Peter, welcome back. Thank you, Caroline. Maybe what JD Vance is getting at is this. Yes, we all know Digweed was born in the UK. That's the murderer of Henry Novak. Yes, we all know he was born in the UK. However, his parents weren't. His parents were afforded the opportunity to immigrate to the UK, and we were welcomed in like many others. Had that not happened, had his parents not immigrated and been so welcomed, Digweed would not have been here and Henry would be alive. We all know now that it was not actually a kirpan that was used to kill Henry. However, the excuse of carrying a ceremonial religious dagger was used to try to justify the murder. In short, if it weren't for the unlimited and mass immigration of other cultures without question, and for the resultant positive discrimination against native British people, Henry would be alive, in Caroline's opinion. Sarah says, two-tier anything only exists because we have so many different cultures here. We have been desperate to accommodate all the cultures that are raised the most basic of our own. Fairness. We have separate rules for them, whether it be carrying knives, ignoring grooming gangs, or being scared of the word racism. So yes, immigration is the major problem here. It is also in every problem this country has today, says Sarah. I know Marion in Norfolk wants to talk about the banknotes. Marion, you're very welcome to the programme. What do you make of Churchill being removed?
Oh, hello. I am very unhappy. I was a wren at Churchill's funeral on the 30th of January 1965.
Really? You were there?
Yes. I've got black and white photos of me standing there in the freezing cold.
Wow.
At 18 years old, I wasn't political. I didn't know Labour, Conservative or anything. But I was so aware of being proud and privileged to be there because this man brought us through World War II, and I think he's one reason, a very big reason, why we remained British. And my second point is removing such individuals from our banknotes it's a bit of a conspiracy theory, I know, but I believe it's to pander to Muslim votes, because in Islam it is held as haram or forbidden to depict or create the human form. And I think the whole issue
I don't think it's the human form in general. I think it's Muhammad himself. I think you can't depict the human form.
Churchill is a bit of a red herring, because obviously Jane Austen wasn't a political figure, but however, she was a woman. So I think they're just trying to please everybody.
Okay,
and
very interesting point
trying
there.
to water down our British identity. So no, I'm not happy with that at all.
Marion, just before you go, I wonder if I could just ask you a little bit more about Churchill's funeral. I mean, that must have been an amazing and very humbling experience to be there, a huge occasion for the country as well. You must be very proud to have been a part of that.
Yes, it happened very quickly. I hadn't been in the Wrens for very long, and they were looking for volunteers to line the route outside St Paul's Cathedral. And I remember how cold it was. My legs were so frozen as we stood there, and I got to see all the foreign dignitaries going by. I got to witness the almost dropping Churchill's casket as they came out of St Paul's. That was a heart-stopping moment.
Of course,
but yes, I did feel very proud, because obviously I'm of an age where my parents were actively engaged in the Second World War. Yeah. My father was in the Air Force, and my mother drove ambulances through the Blitz and has a little bag of bits of bomb that missed.
Goodness
so, yes,
me.
This is proud for me.
You should be proud. You absolutely should. What a great memory to have, and what heritage your family has as well. Marion, really interesting to talk to you today. Thank you for that. That's Marion in Norfolk. April is in Shropshire, and let's talk about the badges in the NHS. April, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me on. It was about somebody earlier saying, oh, well, in that case, we shouldn't be wearing poppies, which is absolutely ridiculous. The poppy is not a political emblem. How could anyone be offended by that? It's not a live political issue, is it?
I totally agree with you. I 100% agree with you. I wear my poppy with pride. My grandfather's brother was an RAF navigator. He was killed over Berlin. I've been to his grave. I'm really, really proud. There are some people who take offence at that. I come from Northern Ireland, where a lot of people take offence at the poppy and don't wear poppies. I think it's disgraceful, and I think they need to take a long, hard look at themselves. And you're absolutely right. It's not in the same category as, for example, a pro-Palestinian badge, is it, April?
No, and it's diluting, again, part of our historical past, isn't it? Again, it's part of this global agenda which is being forced on the whole of Europe. We're not the only country that are experiencing this global agenda.
OK, well, listen, thanks for your thoughts, April. Let's speak to John in Crewe now and to hear from him on Law and Order. John, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yeah, pleasure to speak to you. Before I do comment on that, I'd just like to mention that you don't need to read out the names of the candidates at the forthcoming election.
You do. I'm afraid you do. We're advised to anyway.
The reason I say that, ITV's Peston show, he didn't read them out. He said they're all on the website.
Yeah, you see, we take a slightly more cautious approach. You can say they're all on the website. It's a bit of a grey area, but listen, there's a woman called Compliance Claire. I mean, her name isn't Compliance Claire, her name's Claire, but we call her Compliance Claire. She's behind the scenes. She tells me what to do. And John, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm slightly scared of Julie Hartley-Brewer. I'm more scared of Claire. So if Claire tells me to do something, I do it.
OK, now to comment on what was before, a lot of this started when we made an exception for Sikhs, who I greatly respect, back in the days when crash helmets became compulsory. We allowed Sikhs to not wear crash helmets.
Yes, that's right.
A division that shouldn't appear. We should treat people the same. Now, apart from that, commenting on Law and Order, I lived through the Second World War myself. But in my life experience, I'll tell you what does work, Peter, in my opinion. When I went once to Nigeria, they had executions on the beach. They have the death penalty. Another country I went to where they also have the death penalty was Saudi Arabia, where they had severed heads.
I don't want to be like Saudi Arabia. I don't want to have the death penalty.
Well, continuing from there, another country that also has the death penalty that I visited, and often visited, is Singapore. Now, why does it work in Singapore?
I don't know if I think this is a longer argument for another day, perhaps, John. But I'm just not in favour of the death penalty at all. I don't think it is a deterrent at all. But John, listen, we'll perhaps talk more about that on another day. I just want to, before the end of the programme, quickly get Greg from Edinburgh in as our final caller. Greg, you're very welcome to the programme. Tell us your view today.
Hello, Peter. No, it's just that it's interesting, this discussion about taking Winston Churchill off the £5 note.
Yes.
And my point to your producer was, it's just yet another symptom. It's symptomatic of the apathy of the majority. Because it's a democratic decision, really, because they had a public consultation.
Yeah.
And more people wanted to put badgers on than Winston Churchill. And my point, as I said to your producer, was the left never sleeps.
Yeah, it's very true. There's nothing they won't try to take away. It is just absolutely absurd. And I think if you want a unifying symbol, Churchill, it should be that anyway. Greg, great common sense there, and thank you for that. Brad in Cambridge says, great show. I want a Britain that has many ethnicities, all contributing to one British culture. What we have are many cultures fighting for supremacy, says Brad. Betty says, on these Navy ships plagued with issues, the Ministry of Defence and Civil Service cannot be trusted with more cash. They're only interested in their pensions. We need the team that did the vaccines to manage the Ministry of Defence, says Betty. Well, thank you for that. David Sullivan, the West Ham co-chairman, that is more of a statement here, says the false allegations levelled against me have been sensationalised by the media after a lifetime spent building businesses in the adult industry in which I've met thousands of women. It is sadly inevitable that a small number of improper conduct claims are being made against me. I categorically deny these claims. He made his fortune from owning pornographic magazines and sex shops. We will find out what those allegations are. There's clearly a Sunday newspaper story coming, or some sort of big revelation or allegation which he denies, of course. We will bring you up to date on that, of course.